Story 1. Golden child brother sabotaged my business startup, so I cut off my toxic family. Years later, they crawled back wanting to invest, but I just laughed in their faces. I, 33, female, have had no contact with my parents for the past 3 years. The reason for that was my younger brother, 30, male, who convinced our parents a couple of years ago that investing in my business was a bad idea and told them to back out at the very last minute, leaving me without any investors after I had already quit my job. I'm going to be blunt and just say it. I hate my brother. And this is not just because of what happened a couple of years ago. I've always hated him since I realized that my parents were always going to love him more than me. He was always the golden child and I was whatever. My parents are immigrants, and in our culture, men are pretty much kings, so we were never treated equally, and they didn't even pretend that we were. It had always been made abundantly clear to me that he would always come above me. My parents are extremely traditional, and they think that the only duties of a woman are the ones related to household chores, marriage, and babies. That is it. I have always known that they had been expecting a son as the first kid, but they got me instead. I wouldn't say that they were outright cruel to me, but it was very obvious that there was a certain bias when it came to my brother and me, and that bias was always in his favor. It would probably help the situation if my brother wasn't a huge jerk, but unfortunately he was. He had always known that my parents would love him more than me no matter what, and he shamelessly used that to his advantage. He would constantly hog the limelight whenever I achieved something and make sure that every day was about him. Just an example of his attention-seeking behavior. On my 18th birthday, he decided to announce that he was dating a college senior and was planning on dropping out of high school to live with her. Now, obviously, that would send any parent into hysteria, and that's exactly what happened. Not to mention the friends and relatives who were present at the party and heard his crazy announcement. None of that ended up being true, but it didn't matter because he had already ruined my birthday. So, you guys can probably imagine what kind of person he was. He was a horrible human being, and I despise him to this day. I swear, once I moved out for college, I never looked back and didn't come back home unless it was absolutely necessary for me. My parents also didn't seem to miss me much. They had their golden child with them, and that's all that mattered. Even when he moved out to start college, he got a bigger goodbye than I did. My farewell party only had my family and a couple of my friends, but for him, they put together a huge bash and invited everybody that they knew, even rented out a proper restaurant to celebrate the occasion. I didn't have any hopes for my parents, and I knew that once I was an adult, I was on my own. There was no way that they would ever want to spend any sort of money on me, and the only reason that they were even paying for me to go to college was because they could sense my dad was pretty rich. I was actually pretty glad that they were financially well off because, to them, sending me to college was a huge waste of money since I was only supposed to get married and have a family once I graduated. But I had begged them to let me go and said that if they did, I would be eternally grateful to them. And I guess having some sort of control over me is what made them pay for me to go to college. That's just my guess, though, but I'm sure that it might be pretty accurate. Anyway, I graduated from business school and I was a really great student, so it wasn't hard for me to find a job soon after. Once I started earning, I told my parents that I would pay them back the entire amount eventually, but I wasn't getting any time soon. They were kind of disappointed because they had actually believed I was going to start looking for prospective husbands just after I graduated so I could settle down and have a family. My mother was actually still opposed to the idea of me working and said that it was much safer for me to just start looking for a guy and get married because if I got older and richer, then no guy would ever want to marry me. Yeah, I know it sounds like a nightmare, and it pretty much was. But that's exactly how my parents are. I don't know why they are that way. I'm guessing they were just raised to be like that. But you can always unlearn stuff. I guess they never bothered to. But I explained to my mother that times were changing and it was more important for me to be independent than to have a family. They were mad at me for a few weeks, but when they realized that it didn't affect me in any capacity, they went back to normal, and we were back to having a civil relationship. I had already started paying them back at that point since I had a stable job and decent income. After working for a few years and living frugally, I managed to pay off my entire debt. And after that, I didn't really see a point in trying to have a cordial relationship with my parents anymore because, to me, it was clearer than ever that my brother was their only priority. We would occasionally meet for lunches or maybe run into each other at family gatherings before, But once my debt was paid off, I started seeing them less because I would always find it very suffocating to be around them since they would constantly be pressuring me into looking for husbands and getting married as soon as I could. So I started reducing my visits to their house. Another reason for that was also because whenever we would meet, they would constantly be bragging about my brother. He had also graduated from business school, but he was nowhere as close to me. He was a terrible student from what I knew and had wasted his years partying away, so I don't know what my parents were bragging about. It was just annoying because they never bragged about me, even though I was in a much higher position than him and was earning a lot more. My brother hadn't even been able to find a job on his own, and my dad had to hire him, which was basically just an obligation. He could literally not do any work and still get paid, so I don't think there was anything very tough or brag-worthy about it. But anyway, I was used to being treated like that by my parents, so it was not surprising in the slightest. The only reason I had ever even stayed in touch with them was because I owed them money, and it felt weird not to be on talking terms. But after that was done, I started focusing more on my own work, and they didn't try to get me to meet with them more often either, so we sort of grew apart. But then, a couple of years later, a coworker of mine and I started brainstorming and decided to start a business of our own. After a lot of deliberation, he and I worked out everything before I even approached my parents. We had a proper business plan and everything because I wasn't going to go up to my parents as their daughter but as a potential businesswoman asking for an investment. At the time, my parents and I were barely speaking. It had been really awkward for me to go up to them to ask for money, but I knew that my dad was at least a brilliant businessman, and his acumen would really help us. My partner also thought that was a great idea, and most importantly, they were our safest bet. So, I approached my parents to ask them for an investment, and they were actually pretty impressed with whatever my partner and I had come up with. They didn't find it awkward at all that I had come to them for business purposes after years of being distant from them, and they knew and respected the fact that this was purely transactional. I don't think they would have even agreed to invest in my business if it hadn't been a brilliant idea. I think it's pretty obvious that they didn't care that I was their daughter, but my dad did like the sound of making more money, which is why he agreed. But unfortunately, it had been a verbal agreement, and he said that he would only get the legal paperwork done and stuff after he had his lawyers do the due diligence and we had come up with something more tangible than just business plans. So, for months, my partner and I continued to work at our jobs while also working on our business alongside it because we had a couple of potential investors. But my parents were willing to make the biggest investment and contribute the most, so to impress them and keep them on board, we had to work really hard. It took us a couple of months, but after almost 75% of the work was done, I approached my father again, and he said that he was impressed and that he would finally agree to the paperwork. My partner and I put in our 2 weeks' notice literally one day after my dad said that he would be investing and writing us a check soon. But that never materialized because just a couple of days later, my parents called me back to their house and said that they had reconsidered everything and they were not willing to invest in my business anymore. I still remember the conversation, and I remember feeling like the world had come to an end because I couldn't believe that they were hanging me out to dry like that. When I asked them why exactly they didn't think it was a good idea anymore, because up until a week ago they had been quite on board with it, I knew that there was something fishy going on and I had to get to the bottom of it. So, I pushed them until they finally told me that they had spoken to my brother, and he was the one who had told them that he didn't think that my business was investable and he thought that it was going to fail. So, my father was backing out solely based on his word. I was shocked, so I asked them why my brother hadn't said anything about this before. My dad told me that apparently my brother had been thinking about it for quite some time, but he wanted to see what exactly I would come up with before he came to a decision. I instantly realized that my brother hadn't been thinking about this. He had only been thinking about how devastating it would be for me if he decided to sabotage me at the very last minute, and that's exactly what he had done. Like a nasty little conniving snake, he had waited until I had done most of the work to tell my dad that he thought that this was a bad idea and was going to fail, so my dad would back out and I would be completely screwed. He had played his cards just right and made sure that I was left in an incredibly difficult position. I threw a fit at my parents' house that day and told them to go jump off a cliff. I said a lot of other horrible things about them and my brother and then went back home to regroup and think about what I was going to do next because I had my partner counting on me as well, and I couldn't let him down. I told him what had happened, and I was quite devastated, so he consoled me and said that we could still take back our resignations if the company would still have us back. But I had already made the leap, and I wasn't willing to go back, so I started looking for other investors. We really needed the funding because we had some big ideas, and our own savings wouldn't be enough, so we were really selling our business idea hard and pitching to anyone who would hear us out. After a couple of weeks, we had managed to put together a couple of investors, and they did give us the funding that we desperately needed, so we started building our business from the ground up. The first couple of months were the most difficult. There was a lot of work to do, and we had a lot of sleepless nights wondering if we were doing the right thing and if this would work or not. But a few months later, we did manage to break even, and we have been going really strong ever since then. There has been no looking back, and it's all thanks to me and my partner and the amount of hard work that we put into this. It was quite simple because we had faith in our idea and ourselves, and we knew that we could do this. So, my brother, in spite of his very cunning plan, couldn't do this for me because it was in my destiny to be successful, and there was no way he was going to stop me. The only good thing that came out of it was that I no longer had to pretend to be on good terms with my family and entertain their BS. I already knew their true colors, but I had still been willing to give them a chance and let them invest in my business because I thought that my parents would be my safest bet. But I forgot just how evil they were and how conniving my brother was. They did not deserve to be a part of this, and I'm glad that they didn't invest because I would hate for them to be a part of my success story. They never even apologized for letting me down at the very last minute, and we never spoke after I stormed out of their house that day. I'm low-key glad that they didn't reach out to me after that because I don't even know what I would say to them. However, recently they got back in touch with me because they wanted to invest in my business. Of course, now that we are doing well, everybody wants to be a part of this. It happened a few days ago. It was a Sunday, so I was at home, and they showed up at my place. I've been living in the same apartment ever since I graduated from college, so it was pretty easy for them to find me. When I saw them standing outside my door, I was quite taken aback, because I couldn't imagine them having anything to say to me after so long. I mean, it had been almost 3 years since the incident, and they had never even tried to get back to me after that. I still opened the door and let them in because I thought that they were going to apologize to me and try to make amends with me. Some crazy part of me thought that they were here to actually make things right with me, but I was wrong. They were only here to say that they finally knew that I was doing well, and they now thought that my business was something that they could be a part of and wanted to come on board as investors. They didn't even try to make small talk with me or ask me what I was doing. They just got to the point. I kind of appreciated that because at least they didn't waste my time and make me think that they were going to make things right. But it was just so funny to me how optimistic they were about this because, from the looks of it, I had deduced that they really expected me to just agree with them and let them come on board. I just laughed in their faces and told them that that wasn't happening. So they could leave now because we had nothing more to discuss. My father looked really shocked when I told him that, and he started to struggle to find words to explain what he was feeling. He went completely red in the face and said that I had no right to insult him like this because, apparently, he was my father, and I had to treat him with respect, even though they had never treated me with anything remotely similar all my life. So, I told them that I was showing them the exact same amount of respect that they had shown me all those years ago, especially since he was here as an investor and a businessman, not as my father. My parents were pretty scandalized, and I could tell that they wanted to argue with me, but I wasn't in the mood to entertain it, so I told them to leave and said that I didn't want any investment from them and we were good. My mother started crying and said that she had always known that letting me go to college would backfire one day, but she just hadn't expected it to happen so soon. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about, but I just wanted them to go away, so I told them to leave once more. But they refused to move, and instead, my mother continued to cry on my couch while whining about how I had embarrassed them. She told my father that if he had just not paid for me to go to college, then I wouldn't have gotten a big head, and I would have done whatever they had asked me to. Apparently, she believed that letting me go to college had been a mistake, and allowing me to work had been an even bigger mistake because apparently that's what had made me so arrogant and proud. Now, she thought that had I not done any of it and just started looking for a husband, then I would have had a family by now. But instead of that, I'm still single in my 30s and will probably never have a husband or kids. She blamed my father for all of this and said that he never should have entertained the idea of investing in my business just to get me to listen to them. So, at that point, I realized that they were back here only because they wanted to obey their orders once again. They did not care about me or my business. They only cared about appearances, and it was obviously really bad for their reputation that I was still unmarried and didn't have any kids of my own. They were arguing in the living room right in front of me like I wasn't even there, and after a while I had enough, so I told them to get up and get out or I would call the cops. My mother started crying even more hysterically at that point, screaming about how it was just so wrong for me to even imagine threatening my own parents by saying that I would call the cops. I was getting really impatient, and I couldn't deal with this anymore. So I got up and physically removed my parents from my apartment. I work out and I'm pretty tall. It also helps that my parents didn't see it coming and were caught completely unaware. So it was really easy for me to push them out of my apartment and slam the door shut. They left after that, and I thought that it was over, but I received a call from my brother a couple of hours later, and he was furious. He was actually threatening to sue because he claimed that I had physically harmed my parents and that I owed them an apology because this was no way to behave with the people who had raised me and made me capable of getting to this position in the first place. I thought it was ridiculous because I had been quite gentle with them, and I don't think they got hurt. I also don't think that it's illegal for anyone to push people out of their own apartments. But the family is all up in arms against me right now, and they say that they are going to sue me if I don't apologize. I cannot figure out what they're so mad about, but they are, and it's really tiring to deal with all the hate. I don't understand what to do right now. Date 1. Okay. Hey guys, it's been a week since my parents visited me, and I kicked them out of my house, and my brother went all moral police on me. My relatives have started a full-blown hate campaign against me online, and it's been a difficult week for me. At first, I had just been considering apologizing to them for the sake of it so I wouldn't have to deal with all the hate, and they would finally stop targeting me. But then, I spoke to my partner and I also read the comments here, and I realized that this was never going to stop even if I did apologize. They would just find something else to hate me for, and there was another good point about how apologizing would actually make it easier for them to file a lawsuit because that could be treated as an admission of guilt. So, apologizing is off the table for now. And I think the only thing that I can do right now is to block them all and hope that it all dies down soon because I really can't take the stress. I would also like to address certain things in this update since many people had asked me why I had continued to keep in touch with them for so long even after they had treated me badly my entire childhood. To be honest, I don't really have an answer for that. I guess it was just nice to have a family because, like I said in my original post, they were not really outright cruel to me all the time. We did have a few good moments, and that's what I stayed for, I guess. Mind you, I'm just talking about my parents right now. My brother and I never had a relationship, and I'm glad that I got rid of him. He is literally the devil in human form, but I think you guys already might have figured that one out on your own. The way he screwed me over before I even started my own business by getting our parents to back out when all the work was already done was pure evil genius. I have to applaud him for it because I don't think anybody else would have been able to come up with such a devastatingly cruel plan and try to ruin someone else's life just because they can. Update 2. So, I decided to speak to my partner about what I wanted to do next regarding my parents and stuff. I was honestly just afraid that the posts that my relatives were making would somehow reach my business associates, and that would be really bad for us. I was scared that it would somehow negatively impact our image, but he told me that I should just ignore it and pretend that it never happened and that it would get all my relatives to stop hating me eventually. Surely, they have lives of their own as well, and when they realize that this is not bothering me, they will go back to whatever they were doing instead of constantly trying to get on my nerves. And I think he has a point, so that's what I'm going to do. A lot of you wanted me to make a post of my own or try to respond to them in whatever way, and while I appreciate the help, I don't think I need it right now because that will just lead to more drama. I just want to focus on my work and move on with my life, and it won't be possible if I'm constantly getting in trouble. Even though getting in trouble with them doesn't really mean much to me, it's still distracting, and I don't need that right now. In other news, since my brother contacted me from a different number, because I had blocked him 3 years ago, I decided to find out what he had been up to since then. I had told all my friends that I didn't want to hear about him anymore when I cut my family off, but now I'm kind of interested. The last time that I heard of him from my friends was just after the fight that I had with my parents, and I told them not to tell me about my family. Back then, my brother was still working under my parents and my dad's company. I recently asked a couple of my friends if they knew what he had been up to, and they told me that he was still working there, which is just crazy because in all these years he hasn't been able to move out of the same position, and that's kind of pathetic. They also told me that my dad's company was about to be acquired, and that could be one of the reasons why he had approached me, because he just wanted to be a part of something without feeling completely useless. Also, of course, what my mother said about wanting to keep me under control, and that would be relatively easy if they had a stake in my business, or worse, a majority stake. But whatever, that's none of my business. I just wanted to know because I was kind of curious. They can do whatever they want. Update 3. It's been close to a month since I posted here first, and I did post a couple of updates in the next few days, but after that I got really busy, and there wasn't much that I had to say since my relatives stopped with their hate campaign against me when they realized that I wasn't going to respond to it. My parents and my brother didn't try to reach out to me after that, since I guess it was very obvious that I wasn't going to apologize. I didn't even have anything to apologize for. I just did whatever anybody in the right mind would have done, so yeah, that's it with my family. My dad's company got acquired, by the way. I heard about it a couple of days ago from a friend of mine, and they made a pretty big deal out of it. They posted about it and even threw a party to celebrate that, because it was apparently a big move. But I don't know if they realize that this does mean that there is a very real chance that my brother might end up losing his job in the long run. I can't imagine him being competent, and the only reason he even has the job that he is now is because my dad was in charge. But once that changes, it's anybody's guess. It'll be quite interesting when, or maybe if, he gets laid off, and I would love to be there to find out how they feel about it. I know it's wrong to rejoice in somebody else's failures, but boy, what I would not give to watch my brother fail. Until then, however, he can just watch me succeed, and I'm hoping that they do keep track of me, because I'm only going to get bigger and richer, so they had better watch out. But on a lighter note, a lot of you guys had been asking me if my partner and I had a thing. It's really cute that people want to find love and everything, but he and I are just good friends. However, I do have a boyfriend, and we have been together for the past couple of years. I didn't mention it because I didn't think it was relevant, and also because I've been really caught up with the whole fiasco that my parents were responsible for, and it just kind of slipped my mind. But yes, we have been together for a while, and things are going great. My parents don't know about it, obviously, but we're even thinking about getting married in a year or so. And guess who won't be invited to that wedding? Lol. My parents had the chance to be decent human beings for once, but they screwed it up, as they do with most things. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I refused to invite my evil stepmom, who bullied me for years, to my wedding, so my dad threatened to skip it too unless I let her come. So I uninvited him as well. I, 25F, am getting married to my high school sweetheart, and we recently sent out the invitations to our wedding. My fiancé, Caleb, 25M, and I decided that I would only invite my parents to the wedding but not my stepmother. It was a very easy decision for me to make because she's a really terrible person, and I would not want her at my wedding because she would just find a way to ruin it. My stepmother, let's call her Jan, 47F, married my father when I was in 8th grade. My parents got divorced when I was really little, and they were never together when I was growing up. They had shared custody, and I spent half the month at my dad's place and the other half with my mom. It was a great arrangement, and I got the best of both worlds, so I was happy about it. My parents dated other people in the meantime, but they were just flings and not permanent enough for me to care about. This went on for a couple of years, and everything was going well until my father started dating January. They started dating around the time I was in 6th grade, and when he introduced her to me for the first time, she was perfectly pleasant, and I actually liked her. But then, her behavior got worse around me, and she constantly made me feel like I was a burden and as if she hated being around me. Look, I get it, a lot of people don't like kids, but I don't think that's an excuse to treat them poorly. At one point, I was practically scared of her and wouldn't approach her at all because I thought she would yell at me. It had happened enough times for me to see it coming. So, I stopped trying to talk to her or befriend her. At first, she would just make faces whenever I entered the room or act really annoyed when I was around. So I tried to be as silent and easily ignored as possible. But after she got engaged, she started treating me even worse and actively picked on me whenever she could. She would try to do it behind my dad's back at first, but once they got married, there was no stopping her. She made my childhood a total nightmare, and the worst part was that my father never stood up for me. She was the kind of woman who saw me as competition. I don't know why, because that seems really unhealthy and kind of crazy, But I can tell you now that that was how she used to act, like I was the contender for her throne or something. She would bully me constantly and make me feel like crap about my appearance, but it didn't stop there. She would even talk about my mother badly and say really nasty things about her. It would boil my blood, and I would often talk back to her, but my dad always scolded me for it, and she got away with everything. I tried to talk to my dad several times, but he was so blinded by her that he didn't even seem to realize that he was alienating me. He would always defend her and say that I was the problem. The only thing he would say was that I was important to him, but so was she, and I would just have to get along with her because he wasn't ready to let go of either of us. He claimed that she only occasionally got annoyed with me because I tried too hard, and she didn't like that. He excused all the bullying by saying that it was just her being concerned about me and that she didn't intend to mock me. But I'm not an idiot. I knew what was going on, and I knew that he was in denial. He was just trying to convince himself that the woman he had married was not an absolute monster. I didn't realize it back then, but I know now that my father had always been selfish in thinking about me. But back then, it was really important for me to have a relationship with my dad, and that's why I was even willing to put up with Jan, even though she was a total nightmare to live with. I let her stomp all over me and completely shatter my self-esteem, all because I wanted my father to be happy with me. I honestly wanted nothing more than to go back to having a normal family with both my parents loving me equally, and I stayed with my dad without complaint because I hoped that things would fix themselves eventually. I never told my mother about this because I was afraid that if she found out how Jan was treating me, she would file for full custody, and then I would never get to see my father again. After a while, I even stopped complaining about Jan's behavior to my dad because I was paranoid that he might give up his rights, and I would end up in the same place, never being able to see him again. I was also afraid that Jan might make him give up custody, but that one was out of my control. So, the best I could do was just not bother her and constantly walk on eggshells around her. I guess it's safe to say that my childhood was not easy, and growing up in my father's house was extremely difficult. But I got through it somehow, and I still maintain a relationship with my father even after I left his home. Call me a fool, but I was really attached to both my parents, and I couldn't imagine a life without them. I was willing to put up with whatever it took, and so Jan got away with everything. She bullied me throughout high school, and my mental health really took a hit. I turned into this weird, silent, introverted kid, something I never was before Jan took over the household. But I tried my best to put on a brave face, and the only thing that got me through was the fact that, in a few years, I would be going away to college, and then she wouldn't be able to ruin my life anymore. So, when it was finally time for me to leave for college, there was nobody happier on the planet than I was. I was thrilled to finally be going away, and the cherry on top was the fact that I was going to college out of state, so I would only have to come back for the holidays. I could just choose to spend the major holidays with my mom while still maintaining a relationship with my father and doing my best not to offend him so he doesn't cut me off. It was a crazy balancing act, but I got through it somehow, and it went on for a couple of years, even after I graduated from college and got a job. I was trying my best to maintain a relationship with my father while still putting up with Jan, who only seemed to be getting worse with age. She was vicious most of the time and would actively try to get me worked up, but I wouldn't let her succeed, and that only made her worse. One day, I was visiting my father for lunch, and she started picking on me again. So I completely lost it, and we got into a very nasty fight. That was probably 3 years ago, and after that, my dad would only invite me home when Jan was not there. I think by that time, he had finally realized that Jan was always horrible to me and that was never going to change. But he also probably wanted to have a relationship with me because I was his only child. So, we started meeting in person either at restaurants or when he knew for a fact that Jan wasn't going to be at home. It was kind of strange but also a huge relief now that I didn't have to deal with her constantly being around us and trying to make everything about herself and her weird issues with me, not to mention the fact that the issues she had with me were completely made up and arbitrary. She hated me just because she could, and she didn't really need a reason for it. Part of me actually even thinks that she might have been one of those crazy people who just enjoyed treating other people badly, especially kids. Otherwise, if she really saw me as competition, she would have forced my dad to kick me out or give up custody. But she kept me around just so she could pick on me whenever she wanted to. Then, around the same time, I started dating Caleb. After dating for a few months, I decided that it was finally time for my parents to meet him, so I introduced him to them at my birthday dinner in my apartment. Everybody seemed to get along. Jan was obviously not invited to that dinner because we were not on speaking terms at the time, and after that we never really reconciled, so she never knew anything about my relationship with Caleb. We got engaged a couple of months ago and have been planning the wedding ever since. It didn't occur to us at any point that Jan might want to be invited to the wedding because, after the way she treated me throughout my childhood and after the last fight we had, I didn't even think that she wanted to have anything to do with me. Besides, we hadn't spoken in over 3 years, and she never attempted to make things right with me. So why would I invite her to my wedding? But then, the invitations were sent out recently, and my father contacted me to tell me that Jan was really upset and offended that she didn't receive one. Caleb and I weren't exactly letting people bring plus ones because we intended on having a small and private ceremony, so it was very clear that she was not welcome at the wedding. And I don't even know why she was expecting to be invited because she hadn't even been invited to the engagement party, and there was no way that she couldn't have known about it because it was all over social media. Granted, I have her blocked, but she still might have heard about it from someone. Honestly, I'm sure that my dad must have told her about it, so she knew all along, and I didn't buy it for 1 second that she just had no idea this was happening. She had every opportunity to reach out to me and apologize, and then I probably would have considered inviting her to the wedding, but there was no apology, so why should I even consider it? It just doesn't even make sense. But my father, for some reason, believes that I should invite her because she is my stepmom, after all. I honestly think that it's a ridiculous idea, and I told him as much, but he is pretty bent on it and we have been arguing about it for days. I really don't think Jan deserves to be invited to my wedding because that would mean that I consider her family, and I really do not. We had been talking about this for quite a few days, and yesterday, my father told me that if I didn't invite Jan to the wedding, then he wouldn't be attending either because it was quite insulting that his wife wouldn't be invited to such an important family event. I was shocked that he would even say something like this because, so far, he had never tried to make things right between me and Jan after the fight. I could understand that Jan was probably doing this because she wanted to create drama before the wedding. She's just an attention seeker, so she was probably enjoying this. But I couldn't imagine why my father was indulging her. He could simply just tell her that, after terrorizing me my entire childhood, she had no right to expect to be invited to my wedding. But instead of standing up to her, he was once again making it seem like was the problem here and trying to get me to change my mind about who I invited to my wedding. Something he had absolutely no say in, mind you. I had actually started to believe that, after the fight, my father was finally coming back to his senses and wasn't going to take me for granted again. But after what he said last night, I realized that it was never going to happen. He was always going to put Jan over me. So, I told him that it was probably for the better if he didn't attend the wedding and that I would be rescinding my invitation, since I now believe that neither he nor Jan deserved to be present at such an important event. I told him that he was just as bad, if not worse, than Jan because she had been the one who bullied me throughout my childhood and teenage years, but he was the one who allowed her to do it and get away with it with no consequences, just because he was too much of a coward to stand up to his wife and defend his own daughter. He had never taken a stand for me, and it was foolish of me to expect that he would do it at this point. So, I told him that I would rather he not attend the wedding at all or even try to contact me in the future because I was done dealing with this. Then, I hung up and told Caleb about the conversation I had with my father because I wanted someone to reassure me that I had done the right thing. I had no idea what was going to happen next because I had always just assumed that, maybe at some point, my father would be able to see Jan for what she truly was and stand up for me. Clearly, that was never going to happen, and I had to come to terms with it now. I had expected him to try and reach out to me at least once after the fight, but he didn't. The people who did reach out to me, however, were his family, who wanted to tell me that I was being extremely ungrateful, and that I needed to apologize to my father. Honestly, I don't know what's ungrateful about what I did. I was just honest and finally stood up for myself after years of deluding myself into believing that my father actually cared about me. And maybe he does, but clearly not enough to tell Jan to back off. His love for me is not limitless and unconditional, and neither is mine. And I think it's a bit unfair to expect me to invite the woman who completely ruined my childhood to such an important event. I don't trust her, and I would never want her around me after this, so it's ridiculous of her to even expect that she would be invited to my wedding. I think I'm being completely fair by cutting off my father for giving me an ultimatum, but my dad's side of the family thinks that I'm being ungrateful. A lot of them have texted me or even called me to let me know that they are incredibly disappointed in me and that they expected better. By better, they mean that they wanted me to just let my dad do whatever he wanted and stick around regardless of how that made me feel. They think that I should invite Jan to the wedding just because my dad says so. Apparently, I owe it to my father because he was the one who raised me, gave me a nice childhood, sent me to college, and is the reason why I have a good life now. Honestly, I don't think that's such a big deal. Lots of people do it for their kids. I have always been thankful to my dad for whatever he has done for me, but I don't think he deserves to be worshipped because of it. Like any other parent, he did things for me when I was a kid, big deal. That doesn't mean he can just say and do whatever he wants now, and I have to put up with it. Also, let's not forget that I've also made allowances for him. He let Jan bully me throughout my life, and I don't know how people are missing that very significant part of our relationship. It was no secret that she used to terrify me when I was a kid, and my dad never seemed to mind it. All his family members knew about it, and they pretended that it was not a big deal. It's only a problem if I stand up for myself, I guess. My mother thinks that I'm being perfectly fair, and so does Caleb. I'm just here to get an unbiased opinion and make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So, AITA for telling my dad that he doesn't need to attend my wedding because he wanted me to invite my stepmom? Date 1. Hi. Thank you so much for the overwhelming response to my post. I have decided to stick to my decision of cutting my father off. Only after reading the comments did I realize just how much he had been taking me for granted all my life. It's actually insane how much I was willing to put up with just so I could have a relationship with my father, and even that wasn't enough for him. I can't believe that he just doesn't care, his only daughter, and he still doesn't care. It's a horrible feeling, and it just sucks. But it is what it is, and I can't change it. Caleb and my mother have been very helpful and supportive and are trying to help me work through my feelings during this difficult time. It's bad enough as it is. I don't need my father's side of the family bothering me constantly and trying to remind me of all the great things that my father has done for me since I was a kid. Most of the things that they talk about are things that literally every parent in this world does, but they think that my dad is somehow special for doing it for me. I haven't been replying to any messages because it's all really difficult to process. Since these are people who have actually watched me grow up, and they're still against me somehow, all because they want to whitewash my father's image. I don't know what they think they're going to accomplish by constantly texting me and telling me that I'm being ungrateful, but I'm sure as heck not going back on my word and inviting my father or trying to fix things with him. I said what I had to say, and now he either owns up to his mistakes or stays away from me. It's as simple as that. I'm not even asking much of him. I'm not telling him that he needs to leave his wife because I hate her, even though that's what I should be doing because she is a terrible person. But I am still willing to be the bigger person and let him attend my wedding if he just apologizes to me for everything that he did wrong. That's all I want. But clearly, that's too much to ask from someone like my father, who doesn't even want to acknowledge the fact that he's screwed up and only cares about being perceived as a good guy. He doesn't actually want to be the good guy, and I get that now. I really do. I had believed and forced myself into actually thinking of my father as a decent human being who cared about me, but that's not true. Any father who cared about his daughter would never let his wife or anybody else treat them like the way Jen treated me. But he not only allowed it, he let her get away with it for years on end. So no, he's certainly not an ideal father, and I'm not being ungrateful. Update 2. Hey! So the wedding day is coming closer, and it's been a month since I last spoke to my father. My relatives on my dad's side of the family stopped contacting me or trying to tell me that I was wrong after a few days, and I was cut off from that side altogether. Can't say that it made me feel bad because it really didn't. It just made me feel grateful that everybody had shown their true colors before the wedding, and now there wouldn't be any drama at my wedding. But unfortunately, that didn't rule out the possibility of there being drama before my wedding. I almost forgot about the whole fight with my father because I've been so busy planning and managing work. I've just been really swamped. So, when the other day my dad showed up at my house, I was completely blindsided. Of course, I had to let him in. I'm not the kind of person who can simply just refuse to let people inside the house, especially when it comes to my father. I don't know if that makes me weak, but I can't turn my parents away, even if I'm fighting with them. I didn't know what to expect, and I thought that he was going to apologize for a few seconds when he entered the house. But that's not what happened. I mean, I guess you could call it an apology in the weakest sense of the word, but since he's still not attending my wedding, there was no point in that. He came to my house around noon and left about 3 hours later. Once we had an in-depth discussion about our relationship and how to go about fixing it. We couldn't come to a decision, but the discussion that we had was much needed. He finally addressed the fact that Jan had been a bully and that he had let many things slide when I was a kid simply because he didn't want to pick fights with January. It was actually pretty refreshing to hear him acknowledge that because I had never really expected him to own up to the truth. So far, his only strategy had been to gaslight me into believing that I was somehow responsible for the way that she used to treat me as a kid. I would believe it because my dad was saying it, but as I grew up, I knew that that was not the case. I still never spoke up against it because I was so desperate to have a relationship with him, and I didn't want him to cut me off. But now it was finally all out in the open. Once he had acknowledged it, I thought he was going to say that he was sorry for everything that he had done. But he didn't. Instead, he said that while he did feel bad about it, he couldn't say that he was sorry for what he did, because it was the only way he could have a normal life without constantly having to worry about either Jan or me. Now, I don't think that was necessarily true because he could have intervened and tried to fix things between us, but he stayed out of it on purpose because he didn't want to stand up to January gaslighting me into believing that I was somehow the problem was much easier than talking to his wife because kids are much easier to manipulate, and everyone knows that. He also knew that I would never do anything to jeopardize my relationship with him, and he shamelessly used that fact against me to control me and make sure that I wasn't much trouble to deal with. So, Jan continued to bully me, and my dad just stayed out of her way and let me face her wrath. He told me that he loved both of us and didn't want to ruin either of these relationships, so he tried to shirk his responsibilities, and he was successful in doing so. And while he didn't apologize to me at any point, because he never really said the words, "I'm sorry," I can't count it as a genuine apology. He did express interest in being a part of my life going forward and suggested that we start therapy together, or at least do something to remedy the situation. He also told me that he still couldn't attend my wedding if I didn't invite Jan because she actually had been really offended that she hadn't been invited, because she had expected me to let go of the past, even though she had done things that nobody would ever be able to let go of. My dad had already agreed that he wouldn't be attending the wedding if she wasn't invited. As a matter of fact, Jan didn't even know about my dad's most recent visit to my place because she was against the idea of us having a relationship. Apparently, she had allowed it when I was a kid because she believed that it was important for my father to actually feel like a dad and have me around. But I was a full-grown woman now and could handle myself, so I didn't need to come running to Daddy anytime I was in trouble. That's great logic, I suppose, to separate a father from his daughter. I can't believe that he's actually falling for it and letting her get away with these things even now. But I don't really know what to expect from my father anymore. We had a really long discussion the other day, but it ended up going nowhere. I have no idea if there is any point in trying to make things work with my dad because Jan will always be his top priority, and I don't think I can deal with that anymore. I just don't even know what to say about him. This is all just really very upsetting. Update 3. Hi. So it's been a really long time since my last update, and I'm happy to inform you guys that Caleb and I are married now. We got married the way we wanted to, with the people that we wanted around us, just a few days ago, and it was dreamy and beautiful. And no, my dad was not present at the ceremony. Like many of you guys, I had also been wishing that, by some miracle, he would come to his senses and leave Jan so he could attend my wedding. Sadly, that's not what happened, and we are still not on speaking terms. Now, I know that in my last update, I said that he and I had a discussion about this and we were going to work on our relationship and start therapy and stuff like that. But none of it materialized because after that conversation we tried to keep in touch, but he just stopped responding to me after a couple of days. I kept trying to talk to him and reach out to him, but he just never replied. After that, I got busy with work again because I had to wrap up everything before I took leave for my wedding, and I forgot to text him or check up on him. He could have texted me, but he didn't, and we stopped speaking after that. I got to know from a couple of other relatives who were still on talking terms with me that he and Jan had moved away to the suburbs recently, and that's probably what he was busy with. But I can't figure out why he didn't share that with me, or why he even bothered to visit me that one last time and make a bunch of promises that he wasn't going to live up to anyway. I was doing just fine, And honestly, I'm still doing fine, but I was just a little put off and disappointed that, even after making those promises and saying that we would work on our relationship, he still didn't bother to actually show up for me and make it count. It's fine, though. He has disappointed me enough times for me to get used to it, but I'm not going to let it happen again. Now, I'm just going to focus on the relationships that I already have and the people who actually care about me, like my husband and my mother. Caleb and I are leaving for our honeymoon in a couple of days, and that's the only thing that I'm going to think about now. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife passed away suddenly, leaving me to raise our kids. Her estranged parents showed up, blamed me, and are now trying to take our house and children. Last month, I lost my wife. I still cannot believe it as I am writing this because I still feel like she is here with me every day. I am still hoping that I might wake up tomorrow and realize it has all been a very bad dream. I received a call, but it wasn't the usual kind. It was an unexpected video call from my 7-year-old. It happened in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday while I was still at work. I noticed the incoming call from his iPad, and when I answered the call, I found him on the other end looking grim. I asked him what was wrong, buddy, and he replied that something was wrong with mommy. I asked him to give the phone to my wife, and he walked towards the living room and turned the camera to face my wife. To my horror, I saw my wife half slumped on the sofa with her head sideways. I called out her name, and my son started to shake her, but she slumped over even more. My older son tried to hold her head up and told me that something was wrong and that she was too cold. Clearly, she wasn't responding, and her complexion looked very pale. Without a second thought, I shouted her name and hastily made my way out of the office, ready to rush home. Our plan with my boys was always to head to our neighbors in an emergency, so I quickly told them to run next door, assuring them I would call right back. Dialing 911, I shared our location and explained the situation. My workplace was about 25 minutes away from home. The drive felt like an eternity, yet strangely it also felt like mere seconds, if that makes any sense. I called the boys back, and they answered while knocking on the neighbor's door. Fortunately, my neighbors answered, and my sons explained to them about the situation. Immediately, they all hurried over to our place so that they could help my wife. I remained on call, and my son informed me a few minutes later that the police had arrived. With about 15 more minutes of driving, I pulled in and spotted my sons talking to a few officers in the yard while my neighbors stood there, looking distressed. There were 2 ambulances and what felt like a fleet of police cars. I hurried over, and my neighbors walked towards me, trying to explain the situation and how they were too late. I approached the scene slowly and asked the first paramedic if everything was okay. He apologized, explaining that my wife was too far gone and that there was nothing they could do. Seeing her lifeless body, I felt like my world went numb. I was too shocked to speak. I sat down next to her, cradling her head, refusing to accept that she had gone. I don't remember what was happening around me, but all I know is that I felt pain in degrees that I can't even write. The worst part was that my poor little boys had found her. Something had happened to her suddenly, and we wouldn't know anything until toxicology was complete. The paramedics assured me that from the scene, it didn't seem like there was any foul play and asked me questions about my wife's health. I told them how my wife had been facing severe headaches recently, but we chalked it up to migraine. They assured me that we would be getting an answer soon after their tests and took my wife's body away. My boys came and told me how they found her on the sofa, thinking she was just sleeping. They went out to play and returned later, but she hadn't moved, and they couldn't wake her up. It broke my heart that they had to walk around her for an hour or more. That part bothered me the most. The kids were stronger than me. I was a mess trying to say the right things. I hugged them and we all cried together. It all seemed like a very bad nightmare, and I didn't know how to survive without my wife. Later, I had to pull myself together since I knew that I needed to call my in-laws and tell them about what had happened to their daughter. It made me a bit nervous since my wife and her parents had been estranged for a long time. To give some context, my wife and I had very different upbringings. I came to this country when I was 6, and we faced a lot of struggles. My parents worked really hard to support me and my siblings, always putting our education first. My dad often shared his dream of owning a house, but we couldn't save enough as we were renting in pricey areas with good schools. Sadly, both my parents passed away before realizing that dream. My dad left us when I was 17, and my mom lost her battle with cancer almost 3 years ago. My wife grew up fairly wealthy, private schools, designer clothes, and 3 to 4 international vacations per year, flying first or business class the whole way. I was able to attend college thanks to student loans, scholarships, and part-time jobs, which delayed my graduation a bit, while her parents were able to fairly easily cover all expenses themselves. However, I am the last person to say that my wife hasn't earned everything she's gotten. She was an extremely intelligent person, and besides funding her education, her parents were in no way responsible for her accomplishments. My wife and I crossed paths 6 years ago when we both landed jobs at the same company. We started in the same position simultaneously, right after graduating from college. Almost instantly, we hit it off, and it didn't take long for us to begin dating. Although we both still work for the same company, I climbed the career ladder a bit more rapidly than she had and made over twice what she earned. This situation allowed me to tackle my student loans aggressively. Once those were paid off, I redirected that effort into saving for a down payment on a house, an endeavor driven by a desire to fulfill my parents' dreams. When I knew that I was financially comfortable enough to start a family, I decided to propose to her. She was overjoyed and said yes. The next weekend after I had proposed to her, we decided to meet with her parents to share the happy news with them. They were happy as well and announced out of nowhere that for a wedding present, they were going to give us a house. My wife was so excited, and although I was also happy, I wanted to know the details as well. Pretty quickly, her parents then told us that the house would be in her name only and that they expected us to sign a prenup to protect any and only pre-marriage assets, just in case I was marrying her for money. I felt insulted by the implication that I was after their money, especially considering I earned more than my wife. Our financial approach had always been shared. She made around $100,000, and I made about $240,000. We split expenses according to our incomes, with me covering about 2/3 and her contributing about 1/3. This arrangement was set to continue after marriage. Moreover, if she got pregnant, I was ready to take on the entire financial responsibility to ensure no burden fell on her. I shared this plan with my in-laws, but they felt like I was not good enough for their daughter. This really hurt me, but it didn't entirely surprise me because the truth is, my in-laws have never liked me from the moment they met me. I have no idea what I did to make them dislike me so much. I had always been polite to them, so I didn't know what their problem was with me. For example, they didn't really seem to have any interest in talking to me, and I was even once given a backhanded comment by her mother that I wasn't good-looking enough for her daughter. Maybe that may have been true, but I loved my wife and compensated by being a responsible and loving partner to her always. I always tried my best when I was around Mill and Phil to get to know them as best I could, but sadly, they never saw my efforts. My wife had noticed this as well and had tried to talk to them several times over the years, but they never changed. I even know that once, my in-laws tried to talk my wife out of being with me and told her to keep looking for a better partner than me. Fortunately, my wife never cared about her opinion. Coming back to the prenup issue, my wife was offended as well, and she protested against this unequal treatment. However, her parents remained firm. The argument escalated when they started pointing out my humble beginnings, suggesting she should be cautious about our relationship. This deeply offended both of us. Despite my wife's efforts to stand up for us, her parents continued to demean me and insisted on their conditions. As the argument intensified, in frustration, my wife declared that she didn't want any gifts from her parents. Furthermore, she announced that we would save and purchase our own house together. I nodded in agreement, supporting her decision. This declaration offended my in-laws, and their tone shifted to blame. They pointed fingers at me for refusing to sign the prenup, claiming that my stance was creating discord between them and their daughter. The atmosphere became increasingly hostile, with their accusations ringing in the air. Despite attempts to calm the situation, my in-laws continued to berate me, raising their voices and refusing to listen. Faced with their unyielding stance and the escalating tension, we had no choice but to make a difficult decision. We walked out, leaving them behind as they continued shouting at us. Since then, we haven't been in contact with them. The tension and disagreement led my wife to implement a complete no-contact policy with them. Despite the family ties, the emotional strain and differences proved too challenging to bridge. Years passed since we ever talked with them. Over the years, we did buy a house together and went on to have 2 handsome sons. Now that my wife had passed away, I needed to contact my in-laws and give them the devastating news. When I told Mill, she couldn't believe it at first, and then she started to blame me. She was yelling that it was my fault, that I killed her daughter, and that she was going to make me pay for it. I never thought that she would support or comfort me at these trying times, but I also wasn't expecting her to react this way. I also had tried to inform Phil, but he didn't pick up my call, so I hoped he would hear the news from Mill. The next day, they showed up at my doorstep unexpectedly. They started yelling at me in front of my sons that I had killed their daughter and that they were never going to forgive me for it. My son, who had never met their grandparents, looked at them wide-eyed in shock. I tried to calm them down, but Phil yelled that I didn't deserve to marry his daughter and that I should have just left her alone. Mill, on her part, kept wailing and shouting at me. They never once bothered to notice the frightened expressions on my dear boys, who looked devastated seeing my wife's parents blame me for her death. At this point, I had no other choice but to call the police on them. When the police arrived, Mill and Phil rushed to accuse me of murdering my wife. The police officers looked at me quizzically, and I calmly explained to them how my sons had found her body and how we had contacted 911 immediately. The officers questioned my sons for a bit, and they answered them honestly. After that, the officers tried to explain to my in-laws that there was nothing that they could do at this point and that they needed to wait for the toxicology or autopsy result. The officers asked me if I wanted to press any charges on my in-laws, but I refused. I requested them to just take them out so me and my boys could grieve in peace. Later, a doctor contacted me and told me that the first results of the autopsy of my wife revealed the cause of death to be a brain clot, an unexpected blood clot that had blocked her brain. The doctor basically told me that my wife had no chance to survive. I could have done absolutely nothing. After I got a copy of the results, I called my in-laws again just to inform them about the results. They listened to the result and seemed a bit calmer, so I thought they would be okay with me after that. The next thing we clashed on was the funeral. My wife and I never really talked about death because we didn't think so long-term about it. However, I remember that once when we attended the funeral of someone last year, my wife said how she would like an outdoor funeral with nature rather than an indoor one, as it seemed too formal and sad. Following my wife's preference for nature, I suggested a simple outdoor ceremony in our backyard with the flowers and trees that she had spent years growing. The goal was to make it peaceful and thoughtful, aligning with her love for the outdoors. But my in-laws strongly disagreed. They wanted a regular funeral at the local church, highlighting the significance of their religious customs and the comfort they felt in that setting. I refused, telling them how my wife had wished for this, and it was important for us to honor her wishes. She was not that religious. Hence, I didn't want to listen to my in-laws' demands. This infuriated them. Mill told me that I had no right to do this to her daughter and that I needed to stop meddling in her funeral. Phil also started to accuse me of how I clearly never loved my wife and that I probably killed her for her life insurance because of our mounting pressures in marriage. I scoffed and informed them that we were quite happy in our lives with our 2 boys, so we had absolutely no tension. I assured them that whatever happened to her was indeed completely unexpected, but it had nothing to do with any household or marriage stress whatsoever. I stuck to my idea and insisted on an outdoor ceremony despite their arguments. As if these arguments weren't enough, my in-laws continued to fight with me over the days for unnecessary things. When I was organizing the funeral music, the guest list, and the coffin, they didn't want certain people to attend since they didn't talk to them anymore, but I shut them down. I told them that it was a funeral for my wife and that she would have wanted these people to be there. Everyone who wanted to say goodbye to her for the last time was welcome, and I wasn't going to ban anyone from attending. I could see the resentment on their faces, but there was nothing that they could do. The day finally arrived when it was the service for my wife, the beautiful mother of my boys. Part of me wanted to get it over with, but another part wondered if I could handle it. My boys gave me strength. A lot of people turned up, and it was incredible to see how much she was loved. Some of my close friends and family, seeing the state I was in, offered to clean up around the house or help me in any way that they could. It was powerful to see that with my own eyes. Yet, I felt so helpless and guilty when my friends cleaned up my house. The most random words or things I saw made me cry uncontrollably. I had to ask my friends multiple times during the funeral if it was all a dream, literally questioning my sanity, only to realize I felt the heartbreak in my chest. After the funeral, I just lay in our bed where the boys had slept each night since. I was surrounded by my wife's clothes, jewelry, and a phone that continued to vibrate with spam messages and emails. I couldn't help but break down crying. A few days later, we had to go and meet with the lawyer to discuss my wife's will. As the lawyer read through the document, it became clear that my wife had left what she had to me. Mill and Phil, listening to this, completely lost their minds. They started to accuse me of killing my wife for the money, labeling me a gold digger. I couldn't believe their words. Their reaction was not only hurtful but also completely unfounded. The pain of losing my wife was already overwhelming, and their baseless accusations only added to the heartache. They somehow believed that their daughter would have lived if she hadn't married me, that she died because of the life with me. I understood that they were hurt and that they had lost their daughter, so despite all the tension, I tried to hold my tongue as much as I could, understanding their grief was clouding their judgment. But I didn't deserve this attitude. I loved her too. I told them firmly that it wasn't fair for them to blame me for my wife's death continuously, and that I was financially capable enough also, so my wife didn't have to leave anything for me. But she did because she loved me and the boys. So if they had a problem with it, they were welcome to form their own judgment, but that I wasn't going to sit here and listen to them take out their anger on me. I made it very clear to them that they were welcome to contact me once they had calmed down and understood how ridiculous and baseless their accusations were. My in-laws then began questioning me about the house. I met their inquiries with a blank stare as they pressed on, asking who the house would go to. I straightforwardly explained that the house was purchased using both my wife's and my money, so naturally, it would remain in my possession. As my in-laws persisted, arguing that there was no way I could afford the house and insisting that I should sign it over to them, I firmly refused their absurd demand. The tension escalated when they started to threaten me. They warned me that if I didn't comply and sign the house away, they would take away my kids from me. In response to their threatening ultimatum, I looked them in the eyes and firmly declared, "This is ridiculous. I am not going to sign away our house, which me and my wife paid for. You can't just threaten to take away my kids from me. I am their father, and they will stay with me." My voice carried a mix of defiance and determination as I asserted my commitment to protecting my family and our family house, no matter what. Their faces tightened with anger, and frustration flashed in their eyes. The refusal to comply with their demands seemed to further ignite their fury. They exchanged heated glares and retorted sharply, unwilling to back down from their position. In an attempt to defuse the situation and protect my own well-being, I calmly stated, "I won't continue this conversation under these circumstances. We need some time apart to cool off, and you both need to think about what you are asking of me. I am not giving you my house, no matter what you do." Without waiting for a response, I chose to leave the tense environment, hoping that a break would pave the way for more rational discussions in the future. Unfortunately, just a week ago, I received a letter from my late wife's estranged parents demanding that I sign over the house to them or face legal action. They claim that as the rightful grandparents, they should be the ones to raise my children in the home their daughter loved. I am shocked and heartbroken. I never imagined that my grief would be compounded by a legal battle for my own children. I have consulted with a lawyer, and they've assured me that legally, the in-laws have no grounds to demand the house. However, the emotional toll of this threat is draining me. I am not sure how to navigate this situation. My wife and I worked hard to build a life together, and I want to provide the best possible environment for our kids. I'm willing to share custody if the situation worsens, but the idea of losing our family home is unbearable since my boys grew up here all their lives and we don't have anywhere else to go. Have any of you been through something similar? How did you handle it? Was I in the wrong to my in-laws in any way for them to take such an extreme step? I am desperate for advice, support, or even just some honest opinions to get through this difficult time. Date 1. I appreciate all the support and advice that poured in after my initial post. It's been a rough journey since my wife's passing, and the situation with my in-laws has only escalated. Just wanted to give you all a quick update. After receiving their threatening letter, I decided to follow my lawyer's advice and not engage in direct communication with my in-laws. Instead, I focused on providing a stable and loving environment for my kids during this challenging time. They've been my priority, and I'm trying to focus on spending time with them. In the meantime, my lawyer prepared a response to their legal threats, outlining the reasons why their demands had no legal basis. The letter was sent, and now we're waiting for their reply. It's a stressful period, but I'm trying my best to stay strong for my boys. Update 2. Hello. It's been 4 months since my last update, and I wanted to share a significant development in the ongoing saga with my in-laws. I couldn't update you before these legal proceedings concluded, and I'm relieved to provide you with some positive news. Finally, after our lawyers exchanged letters and attempted negotiations, it became clear that my in-laws were determined to pursue legal action. Consequently, we found ourselves in court, where our respective legal teams presented arguments regarding the custody of my children and the ownership of the house. The legal battle was intense, emotions running high as both sides made their case. My lawyer had meticulously prepared our defense, presenting evidence of the joint ownership of the house and highlighting the stable environment I provided for my children. I had proof showing how I and my wife bought this house without any financial help from the in-laws whatsoever. We also emphasized the lack of legal grounds for my in-laws' claims and how they had never been involved in our sons' lives. On the other hand, my in-laws' legal team relied on emotional appeals rather than concrete evidence. The judge, seemingly unswayed by their emotional arguments, requested clear documentation to support their claims. As the proceedings unfolded, it became evident that their legal standing was weak, and my lawyer seized the opportunity to expose the inconsistencies in their case. The judge attentively listened to both sides, and when it was time to render a decision, to my immense relief, the judge ruled in my favor. He acknowledged the joint ownership of the house, hence declaring that the house belonged to me, and reprimanded my in-laws for trying to take my sons away from me at such a vulnerable time, when the children had already lost one parent. The lack of a legal basis for my in-laws made them lose their case, as was already expected. Although I am happy that one major tension of my life is over, it still hasn't made me forget how to live my life without my dear wife. I grieve for her every day, and I miss her immensely. Every night, when I put my sons to bed, I can feel how much they miss their mom. They ask about her, wonder why she had to go, and say how much they wish she was still here. It's really sad to see them wanting her, and I struggle to find the right words to help them feel better. In the middle of all these feelings, my close friends have been there for us. They see how tough things are for us, and they do whatever they can to help. They help with practical stuff and understand how my sons are feeling. Having them around makes things feel a bit more normal and comforting during these hard times. Thank you all for your words of encouragement and advice as I continue to rebuild and move forward. I'll keep you updated on any further developments. The legal battle may be over, but the journey toward healing is ongoing. Update 3. My life with my boys has become more settled. We've established new routines, and I've made it a priority to provide them with a nurturing and loving home. From school activities to weekend adventures, we're navigating life's challenges together. One of the most significant reliefs is that my in-laws haven't troubled us since the legal battle concluded. It seems that the resolution in court has brought a sense of finality to the situation. I have no contact they can reach me with, and if they do ever show up on my doorstep, I will be ready to call the police in case things go awry. The boys are adjusting as best as they can, and we've sought professional support to help them process their grief. It's a journey, but I'm committed to ensuring they grow up in a positive and supportive environment. As for me, the healing process continues. While the void left by my wife's absence remains, I'm learning to navigate this new chapter with resilience and hope. Thank you all for being a part of this journey. Now on to the next story. Story 4. After my dad died, his mistress and her kids harassed Mom and me for half the inheritance. So I stalked her, caught her cheating on her sick husband, and exposed everything online. Hey, so my mother and I are in a really difficult spot right now after my father passed away a couple of weeks ago, and I did something. I don't think I did anything wrong, but the people close to me think I went too far and it's messing with me. So, for some backstory, my father, 54M, passed away a month ago from a heart attack. It was really sudden, and nobody saw it coming, so it was a huge shock for all of us. My mother, 52F, and I, 26F, have been trying to get his affairs in order, and recently, we also found out about his extramarital affair. It was a huge shock because my parents had been married for almost decades, and we had no idea that my father was even capable of this. We had a funeral for him, and after that, my mother's friend from college, Alice, 52F, came clean to her and confessed that she had been having an affair with my dad for the past 10 years. At first, we didn't even believe her, but then she started showing us pictures and screenshots of her conversations and emails with my dad. She told us things that only we knew about our father and even told us about the burner phone that he used to text her from. Alice and my mother had been friends since college, and even though they were not close after graduation, they would still meet a couple of times a year at parties and stuff. One of those times, my mother had attended a college friend's party with my father, and there they had run into Alice and her husband. That was a really long time ago, but my dad and Alice started their 10-year-long affair at that point, which only ended with his demise. My mother and Alice had met several times over the years, and nobody had ever suspected anything because my dad was just that great of an actor, and so was Alice. So, when my mother finally found out about the affair, she was shattered. She was already finding it very difficult to deal with the grief of losing her husband, and now she had to deal with the fact that he had been cheating on her. The worst part was that my father had pretended to love my mother until his very last breath, and my mother had been convinced that she was the only woman in his life because she had no reason to suspect otherwise. As if this was not bad enough, Alice and her kids started harassing my mother to include her and her kids in the will informally because she felt like she deserved something out of my father's death because she had loved him. She has 2 sons, both around my age, kind of younger actually, and all of them have been calling and texting my mother relentlessly, trying to get her to include them in the will. The will is in probate right now, but the problem is that my father had phrased it vaguely, and if Alice wants to, then she and her kids could definitely challenge the will. Alice forced my mother to tell her the contents of the will when she had first come over to tell her about the affair, and my mother couldn't even say no to her because she had been just desperate and grief-stricken by my father's passing. There was also the fact that Alice herself had a pretty sad existence. Her husband had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia a couple of years ago, and she was having a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he might not make it for long. She had quit her full-time job to work from home and was a nurse to her husband. Her husband had also been to the same college as my mother and was a senior. He was actually a pretty nice guy, which is why everybody felt bad for Alice, including my mother, who has pretty much lost her head ever since my father passed away. I hate to say this about my mother, but she hasn't ever been the most mentally stable and emotionally strong person, and this incident has shaken her up even more. She has done quite a lot of stupid things, the first being telling Alice the contents of the will. She told me that she felt bad for her, even though the woman had been cheating with her husband and had broken her marriage. But my mother claimed that she couldn't bring herself to hide the contents of the will from Alice, especially when both of them were crying about the same man. She had almost even agreed to split everything with Alice, but thankfully, she informed me about it, and I put an end to it because there was no way that I was sharing anything with Alice and her kids. She might have been my dad's affair partner, but it didn't mean she had any claims to his estate. That was all ours. I made my mother cut Alice off and block her everywhere. So, after a few days, she and her kids took to harassing me online instead. But I'm not my mother, and I wasn't scared, even though they kept threatening me by saying that they would expose my father to the world by publicizing the affair, and that wouldn't be a good look for me and my family. Our reputation would really take a hit, and that would also mean negative publicity for my dad's business, which I was supposed to take over. They told me that the only way out for us would be to informally split the estate and the profits from the business. That way, everybody would be happy, and nobody had to suffer the consequences of my dad's selfishness. But I wasn't on board with that plan and declined their offer. My mother, however, wanted to take them up on it and kept trying to persuade me to agree to their terms. She didn't even like the fact that I had been arguing with them online. In one conversation, Alice's son had told me that we were cheating them out of what they deserved, and he would be forced to expose us for the frauds that we were if this continued. So, I had told him that his mother was the real cheater here and threatened to tell his father and ruin their marriage if they kept bothering me. The spat had become pretty nasty, and all of us were only staying quiet out of fear for our reputation. She said that she didn't think it was worth it to fight them on this because otherwise, they might go public with the news of the affair, and even though it would hurt them and ruin Alice's marriage, it would hurt us more because then my father's business and his reputation would take a hit, and he wasn't even here to defend himself anymore. So, it would be in our best interest to just agree with them and let this go because she didn't want more drama, and she also didn't want to fight with Alice because she felt bad for the woman. I had plans to tell everybody about the affair myself so they wouldn't have anything on us, but my mother begged me not to, mostly because she didn't think that it was necessary to malign my father's image after he was gone, and we should be trying to preserve it instead. But also because she felt bad for Alice, since she had been manipulated into thinking that Alice would use the money to support her family because her husband wasn't in a stable condition anymore. So, she kept begging me to just split everything and sweep this under the carpet because she didn't want anyone to find out. I was pretty much fighting everybody on my own, including my mother, who wanted to just lay on the ground and let Alice and her kids walk all over us just because her husband was sick. But I wasn't going to take it. So, I went behind my mother's back and decided to do some digging about their family so I could get some more dirt on them and run things my way. I might have gone too far, but I secretly started following Alice to find out more about her comings and goings during the day. I trailed her for 1 week, and luckily, she was too absent-minded to notice that I had been following her around. She would spend a major part of the day at home with her husband, presumably taking care of him, but in the evening, she would head out for a walk and run some errands before going into a coffee shop a little distance away from her house and spending almost 3 hours there. I had no idea what she would do inside for almost 3 hours, and I didn't have the courage to go to check for the first couple of days. The coffee shop didn't have clear windows either, so it was difficult to guess what was going on inside. But after almost a week, I decided to go in and speak to the barista or something because I wasn't making any progress, and I still had no idea what she would do there. But my gut feeling was that something was fishy, and I felt like I had to follow up on it. So one day, after Alice had left the shop, I decided to go in and strike up a conversation with the barista. I tried my best to be friendly, and I was lucky that the girl behind the counter was equally friendly and quite talkative. After chatting with her for a couple of minutes, I decided to ask her about Alice and if she was weirded out by the fact that I was asking about another customer. She didn't let it show on her face and instead told me that Alice had been coming to this coffee shop almost every day for about a year. She said that she always has the same routine in the same order. She would get coffee as soon as she walked in the door and would sit and finish her coffee while waiting for her boyfriend to show up. The second that the barista mentioned her boyfriend, I realized that my instinct was right, and she had indeed been having another affair apart from my father, because, let's be real, nobody needs 3 hours to have coffee by themselves. Anyway, the barista went on to tell me that once her boyfriend arrived, which was usually 10 minutes after she came by, they would take the other exit and leave through the side of the building, and then Alice would come back in the same way about 3 hours later and leave from the main exit. That explained why I hadn't been able to see her leave the building because she had been taking the other exit, and my car was positioned on the other side of the building. So, after that conversation with the barista, I decided to park my car on the other side and finally get some evidence of Alice cheating. Things happened just the way that I had been told, so I was able to get some videos of Alice leaving through the side door of the coffee shop hand in hand with another man while they giggled. I even got a picture of her getting a peck on the cheek from her boyfriend. Now that I had the proof, there was only one thing left to do, and that was to post what I knew and make sure that Alice and her kids stopped bothering me for good. And that's exactly what I went on to do. I didn't consult with my mother and just made the post without speaking to anyone about it. The only thing that had been holding me back so far was my mom and her belief that if we came out with the truth ourselves, it would somehow make things worse for us. But I didn't care anymore. So, I mentioned in the post how Alice had not only been cheating on her sick husband with my father but also this other man, and yet she had the audacity to claim that she loved my father and believed that she was entitled to any part of his estate. Evidently, that had been a lie to try and get something out of my dad's passing. She didn't love him or anyone else. She only wanted the money, and that was all. She probably wasn't even going to use it to support her family because all of them were so greedy. In the post, I also mentioned how she and her kids had been trying to blackmail me and my mother into splitting everything with them, and said that the only reason I had held back for so long was because I didn't feel comfortable defaming my own father, but I was ready to own up to his mistakes now. And I was also ready to expose Alice for the serial cheater that she actually was. I attached everything to the post, including proof of Alice and my father being together, Alice and her kids blackmailing me, and also the pictures and videos that I took of her with her boyfriend. Once it was all done, I posted it without a second thought, and I believed that I was doing the right thing. But the reaction from my mother and my close family members has made me think otherwise. Everybody hates me now because they think that I ruined my father's reputation with that post just because I wanted to keep all his wealth to myself, and called me crazy for stalking Alice. They accused me of not caring about him as a person and only putting up that post because that would make it less likely for Alice and her kids to be considered for their inheritance. And I agreed with it because my father had been cheating. All I had done was own up to it publicly, so I wouldn't have to give in to Alice and her kids' demands. My mother thinks that I was way out of line because I completely destroyed his reputation, especially when there was a very real chance that he might have gotten away with it had I not opened my mouth for my own selfish reasons. I don't understand why everybody is calling me selfish because, if anything, my father was the one who had been selfish and kept a secret like this from us for a decade. I had already lost my trust in him, but I was not about to let his affair partner screw me out of my inheritance. Everybody refused to even talk to me because they thought that I was selfish and entitled, but I don't see anything wrong with what I did. I was just trying to protect my inheritance. My dad having an affair was his choice, and exposing him for it and acknowledging his mistakes after he was gone was mine. It didn't even harm the family's business and reputation the way that everyone had thought that it would. Some people did say that this was messed up, but that was about it. Everything is still going just as smoothly as it was before, and I think people are really overreacting and making a big deal out of this. If anything, I think my mother should be thankful that I spared her from sharing her wealth with the other woman. That would have been pretty insulting if it actually ended up happening. But now, Alice has deleted all her social media, and her sons are also not bothering me anymore. I think I really saved everybody out here, but instead of being thanked, everybody is making me out to be the villain, and it's making me question my decision. I still feel like exposing my father's reality to the world was a very small price to pay so that we could get to keep the inheritance without Alice and her kids constantly holding it over our heads. And also, I think we should not forget that they were planning to do this all informally, so they might have tried to extort more money out of us in the future as well if we let them get away with it this time. And it was for the best if we just came clean to everyone ourselves. There was no reason for us to keep hiding it because it wasn't as though my mother or I had made the choice of cheating. It had been my father, and now that he was gone, there was no point in trying to protect him or his reputation from something that he would never have to deal with the consequences of anyway. But my mother and I were still here, and I just felt it was unfair that we would have to pay the price for his cheating and sacrifice our inheritance to keep Alice's mouth shut. That's not even our fault, and it's crazy to expect us to continue trying to cover up for a man who had no respect for us. If he had any respect for my mother or his family, then he never would have cheated, and I can't imagine why everyone is continuing to defend him. Not being alive doesn't suddenly make him a saint, and I think it's time that people started accepting that instead of trying to make me the bad guy. But my mom still doesn't believe it and is refusing to speak to me. It's been really lonely and difficult, and I have no idea what to do next. Update 1. It's with a heavy heart that I'm writing this update to tell you guys that I have decided to cut my mother out of my life. I don't think that we can reconcile after this because I tried to speak to her a couple of days ago, and she said the most horrific things to me. I don't think I can ever recover from that, and I don't wish to speak to her ever again. It's been 2 weeks since she stopped speaking to me first, but I still kept trying to talk to her and make her see my side of things. Unfortunately, she just wasn't interested. She was convinced that I had ruined my father's legacy and reputation and wanted nothing to do with me. It was incredibly frustrating for me as well because I kept trying to explain to her that I hadn't done anything to defame my father. He did it quite well himself, and it was worth doing it because otherwise, Alice and her kids would just keep holding the affair over our heads and force us to do whatever she wanted us to do. I tried to explain to her that my father was the real culprit here, as well as Alice and her kids, and I was just trying to look out for me and her. The last time that I called my mother to talk to her yet again, she told me that she didn't want to speak to me anymore, and that she was sick and tired of my excuses. She said that after this, I was only allowed to contact her if it was to issue an apology. But other than that, she didn't want to hear from me. I was really upset, and I told her that she was the one who should be feeling sorry for me because I was the one who was being ostracized just for speaking the truth and trying to protect us. I reminded her that my father's side of the family wasn't going to look out for her, and they had proven it already by turning her against me, even though I was the one who spoke up and tried to protect us from being pushed even further into a corner by Alice. If my father's family could have it their way, they would just hush everything up and brush it all under the rug, even if that had to be done at the cost of my and my mother's future. They didn't care about us. They only cared about the reputation that my father had and protecting their own family name. I was trying to make my mother realize that, but instead, she turned on me and told me that she didn't need me to look out for her, since I wasn't even capable of looking out for myself. When I asked her what that meant, she told me that the family was planning to exclude me from the will and contest it. So, all the hard work that I had put into running behind Alice and proving that she had no real love for my father, and they were not the star-crossed lovers that she was making them out to be, was all futile. My mother told me that I had screwed everything up, not just for myself but also for her, because she was caught in the middle of all of this. Even though she didn't want to be involved in this mess in any capacity, she had only wanted to split the inheritance and keep this quiet, but I just had to be greedy and have it my way, and now there were several more people against me, standing in the way of my inheritance. My mother reminded me that Alice could still challenge the will and make it a long-drawn process, but now I also had to worry about my father's family, and that was all thanks to myself, apparently. They believed that I didn't deserve to inherit the business anymore, even though I was still running it in my father's absence, and none of them had even stepped up to take that responsibility. It was also frustrating that I started crying on the phone call with my mother after she had told me all of this. But instead of consoling me, she started telling me that this was my own fault for not listening to her and there was nothing that she could do to prevent it. She added that even if there was something, she would let this happen because she felt like I deserved this. That made me cry even harder because I would expect something like that from my father's family but not from my own mother because I had always believed that at least she loved me. I had already lost my father, and now I felt like I was losing my mother as well. But while I was crying, she didn't offer a single word of consolation and just kept on reminding me that I had created this whole mess and I had to clean it up all on my own. When I tried to tell her that she was really heartless, she told me that I deserved this version of her because I had been really selfish and stupid all this while. I was still holding out hope that she might say something kind to make things less difficult for me. But instead, she told me that she wished I was not her daughter and then hung up on me. That was the last that I spoke to her because I don't know if I can ever go back to being on good terms with my mother after what she said. I just can't. Update 2. Hey, so it's been a couple of days since my last update, and Alice recently reached out to me to tell me that her husband had been forced to file for divorce from her by his family because they saw the post that I had made. Now, she has promised me that she was going to ruin my life just like I had ruined hers. Her kids also don't seem too happy about their parents' marriage breaking apart, and for some reason they're holding me responsible for it and not their cheating mother. It's just ridiculous to me how everyone is blaming me for things that are very obviously not my fault. I have just been speaking the truth and exposing people for what they truly are. If they don't like that, then maybe they shouldn't be that way. You can't be a bad person and then get mad when you get exposed for being a bad person. That's not how the world works, and that's certainly not how my world works. So, they can blame me all that they want, but it's not going to change the facts, and it's definitely not going to stop me from speaking the truth. I have spent a considerable amount of time worrying about what everyone thinks about me, but now I'm at a point where I just don't care anymore. People are going to have a problem with me speaking the truth no matter what I do because the truth is ugly and undesirable, and they hate me for bringing it to their notice so they can't ignore it anymore. But that's their problem and not mine, so I don't have to worry about what they think anymore, be it my mother or my father's family. They can do whatever they want. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I haven't heard from my mother since the last phone call, and I hope that it stays that way because I don't think I have anything left to say to her. She was horrible to me, and instead of grieving with me, she turned against me. I can understand that she was upset about a lot of things, But that doesn't excuse her behavior because even I was upset about the very same things as my mother. She should have stuck by me instead of trying to cover up her husband's faults. Especially since he wasn't even there anymore. But I'm still here. It's disgraceful and sad how she thinks that his passing away absolves him of everything that he did wrong. I love my dad, and I'm always going to miss him, but I can't forgive him for what he did. Maybe my mother can, but she has no right to tell me if I should or not. So now I'm ready to fight against whoever comes in my way, and I have accepted the fact that I'm on my own now. It's always been that way, so whatever. Update 3. Well, it's official, both my father's side of the family and Alice are now contesting the will. But I'm not worried. I know what I am and what I deserve. My dad's lawyer is also fighting for me, and he has known me ever since I was a child. So if he thinks that I'm doing the right thing, then I probably am, and I have no reason to be worried. He told me that they don't have much of a case anyway because all I did was expose my cheating father, and that was only because Alice was blackmailing me and my mother for half of the inheritance, so I had to step up and do something. But other than that, they have nothing against me, and the best that they can do is probably just drag the process out by challenging it. But my dad's lawyer has told me that he is going to try his best and pull out all the stops in his defense. I can tell that he is really serious about this, and it makes me happy that at least somebody is on my side here because I really needed that reassurance. My mother is still not talking to me, but from what I hear, she has stopped speaking to my dad's family as well and wants nothing to do with them either. I received this information from my dad's lawyer, obviously, and he said that my mother has completely shut everyone out. I was worried for her because I didn't want her to do anything stupid in her grief, and I knew that she was already having a really difficult time coming to terms with so much at once. I guess I had mentioned it in my original post that my mother had never been the most emotionally stable person, so I had thought about keeping our fight aside for a while just so I could check up on her. But then I found out that she had moved out of our home with all her stuff and was now living with her sister. So I guess it's not necessary for me to check on her since she is with my aunt to take care of her. I do miss her. I really wish that she would come to her senses and realize that I didn't do anything wrong. I was just trying to protect us. But right now is probably not the right time because she is struggling with her grief, and that's making her say and do a lot of crazy things. So, I'm going to wait for her to come around and realize that I was never the enemy. I always had our best interests at heart. It's great that she realized that my father's family was not looking out for her, which is why she cut them off. And I hope that soon I hear from her because I would really hate to lose her. I only have one parent now, and in spite of whatever I said earlier, I would love to have her in my life. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I lied about who my baby daddy is. Should I reveal the truth? I 26F grew up in the Midwest but went to college in California. There I met and dated Jeff 26M for our final 2 years of undergraduate. After graduation, I stayed in California to get my master's degree while Jeff entered the workforce. We were happy together and we planned to get married after I got my master's. After I finished my schooling, Jeff got cold feet about getting married and eventually becoming a father, abandonment issues from his bio dad leaving, so he broke up with me. Heartbroken feels like it would barely scratch the surface on how I felt. I had a great job in California, so I stayed, in hopes that Jeff would come to his senses and we get back together. We never did. He met Grace 25F and started dating her about 5 months after we broke up. I started planning on moving back to my home state once I realized it was actually over. Then he and Grace broke up at the beginning of this year. Jeff and I ended up sleeping together a few times while they were broken up. It was a very public breakup, no cheating involved. About a week after the last time we had sex, he told me that he and Grace were getting back together. He said he couldn't remain friends with me because he still had feelings for me and he had to let them fade. To be fair to Grace, his final words to me were to not call him unless I was literally dying and just wanting to say goodbye. I left California behind 3 weeks later. 2 weeks after I had returned home, I found out that I was pregnant. It's Jeff's. I wasn't going to be that girl that uses a pregnancy to get a man back. So I deleted all my social media accounts and made new ones that don't have my name attached to them. The only people I added were trusted friends who I knew either had no connection to Jeff or who were loyal to me and wouldn't tell them my new accounts. Too early in my pregnancy, I made the mistake of checking out Jeff and Grace's respective profiles and saw that they refer to each other as Lamp, and Jeff even had a picture of them captioned, saying he was going to marry that girl. That broke me all over again, and I have since blocked them both and decided I had to move on with my life. I'm now 6.5 months pregnant. Since moving back, I have bought my own house in my home state and have been busy building a nursery for my baby. I already love this little baby in my belly, and I feel 100% confident that I can raise and provide for him on my own, with minor help from my family. One of my best friends back in California was having an engagement party. I won't be able to attend the wedding as I'll be busy with a newborn when it happens. So I decided to fly out to see my friends and offer my congratulations to the couple before my life becomes baby-centric. I got into town on Thursday and honestly had a blast seeing all my friends yesterday. Even though it's only been about 6 months since I last saw them, they were all respectful of my wishes not to take pictures of me below the chest. They did post some pictures of me online, but from the angles it just looks like I gained some weight in my face. Nothing that would give away my pregnancy. It's a couple days before my flight back home, and the friend that I'm staying with suggested we go to the store because she wanted to get a scrapbook for our engaged friend. So we went to the store, and as we were getting ready to leave, I saw Jeff's cousin Tanya, 22F, walk in. I talked to her several times at Jeff's family gatherings over the years, but we never really got along. She was always a bit too gossipy for me to like her, so of course she was the last person I wanted to see. The first thing she did was loudly announce that I was pregnant, as if everyone in the store couldn't tell just by looking at me. Then she starts grilling me, asking if Jeff knows. I said no, and that he doesn't need to know as it's not his. That was a lie, obviously, but I didn't want to open a can of worms. Tanya then tells me with how big my belly is that I'm far along and asked how could I move on so quickly. I told her that Jeff and I broke up a long time ago. She responded saying that everyone knows we were still hooking up at the beginning of this year. I did not know that was common knowledge. I figured Jeff would have kept his mouth shut about that anyway. I lied and told her that I already had a new boyfriend and that I was 5 months pregnant. She seemed to accept that and awkwardly congratulated me. My friend and I paid for her stuff and left immediately after that. I prayed it would be the end of it. Like I said, Tanya is a gossip, so of course she went and ran her mouth about seeing me pregnant. Just a few hours later, now a bunch of my friends have messaged me saying that Jeff is blowing up their inboxes trying to reach me. None of them have told him my new number or social media, so he has no way of reaching me himself. My flight back home isn't for another 2 days and I'm freaking out. Some of my friends are saying that I should just tell him the truth now that he knows I'm pregnant. I still say I can get by pretending it's someone else's and that I'm not far enough along for it to be his. I honestly just want to ignore him and go back home. However, I'm having some doubts that that's the right choice and there isn't a consensus on what to do, so I'm turning to internet strangers. Update 1. Hi everyone, so the consensus on my post was to tell Jeff about the baby being his. Even from just the first few comments, that seemed clear. We did end up meeting up. It wasn't particularly interesting or dramatic, but if anyone cares, here's what happened. He got a hold of the friend I was staying with on Instagram. I wanted to just talk to him on the phone, but he insisted we talk in person ASAP. In retrospect, I should have just waited until the next day, but I kind of just wanted to get it over with, and it seemed like he did too. TBH, I thought he was going to tell me that he wanted nothing to do with the kid because I didn't see any other reason why he wanted to talk in person right that second. Keep in mind it was almost 10 p.m. at the time. So my friend and I went to his parents' house where he was waiting. His parents always treated me like family, so I guess I felt comfortable being there, even though we probably should have met at a neutral location. When we got there, Jeff's mom answered the door. She hugged me, and I could tell she wanted to touch my stomach, but she restrained herself and didn't even ask. Thankfully, I always liked her. We made awkward small talk as she led me to the living room. It was clear that they had just had a party as it was still messy with a bunch of drinking cups lying around and confetti on the floor. On the couch was Jeff and Grace holding each other's hands. I was surprised that I honestly felt nothing for him at first. His stepdad offered me a seat, but I chose to stand. I wasn't planning on being there long anyway. Jeff started off saying that I might be able to fool Tanya, but he knows there's no way I would have ever met a new guy and gotten pregnant that fast. So he asked why I didn't tell him. I told him the truth, that the last time we spoke he told me not to contact him unless I was literally dying, and I'm not dying. He told me that he was trying to be respectful to Grace and that obviously this would have been an exception. Grace chimed in to tell me that I ruined her proposal. I found out later, third-hand info, but knowing Tanya, I believe it, that the party at his parents' house was for him to propose to Grace in front of all their friends and families. Tanya waited until after the proposal, and when people were giving speeches, as she told Jeff she was so glad he got away from me and wasn't going to be stuck raising my baby. Then all hell broke loose at the party apparently. I had no idea that happened at the time, or I honestly would not have went to see him at all, but hearing that he proposed was when it hurt. He broke up with me because he was scared of marriage and kids, but he dated her not even half as long as we did, and she got a ring. I put on a brave face, or at least I think I did, and acted like it didn't bother me, but it absolutely did. His mom told Grace that it's not my fault and now wasn't the time for that. Then Jeff told me that obviously I can't move now. I told him that I already did and I was only in California for the weekend. He countered saying that I have to move back. I told him no, I'm not doing that. He said, well, I can't just leave. At that point I got frustrated and told him that I left months ago. My job is in my home state. I bought a house, all my doctor's appointments have been there. I established residency there a long time ago. California isn't my home anymore and hasn't been for half a year now. So then he got frustrated and got up to approach me, asking if he's just supposed to send a paycheck once a month and saying this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I don't really know what he meant by that second part because he just found out I was pregnant a few hours before, but I assumed he was talking about his life plans. I forced myself to calm down and try to be empathetic. I told him that if he was worried about this screwing up his plans for the future, that he had nothing to worry about. I don't want or need anything from him. I've planned everything out from finances to childcare, when I return to work, to even setting up my baby's college fund. It's all taken care of already. He didn't really say anything. I didn't know if he was thinking or just relieved that I had it all handled. I told him he can still get married to Grace and have his own family someday. I promised I wouldn't bother or blame him for anything. My baby will be loved and cared for. Jeff got teary-eyed and told me that I know how he feels about this. He was referring to when he broke up with me and said that he didn't want to be a dad because he didn't think he'd be a good one. He also has abandonment issues from his bio dad walking out on him, his siblings, and his mom when he was 6. I told Jeff that he's not him, his bio dad, that he's better than him and always will be. His mom started crying at this point, I guess from seeing how his dad's abandonment still affects him to this day. I promised Jeff that I wouldn't let my baby think that Jeff was a deadbeat. I'd be honest that we just weren't meant to be together and we live thousands of miles apart. He told me that he can't just not be in his kid's life and that I don't understand what it could do to them. He asked if we could please just figure something out together. I asked him what did he realistically expect would be a solution because I'm not moving back to California and I highly doubt he and Grace wanted to pack their bags and move that far away from their own families and friends. I said I'm not going to be sending my kid on a plane every few months either because that's too much. Jeff didn't say anything to that, so I told him maybe they could be an option when he's older and has more independence, but right now it's not happening. Jeff's eyes lit up and he asked, "It's a boy." I've been careful not to reveal the gender up until then, but I messed up there. I nodded and he nervously asked if he could feel the baby. Before I could even respond, Grace let out this loud wail and stormed off to the kitchen. Jeff apologized to me and then went to go comfort her. His mom excused herself as well as she was still crying, so she left and her husband followed her. That left me and my friend awkwardly standing alone in the living room. All we hear is his mom sniffling in the hallway and Grace sobbing while talking to Jeff in the kitchen. It was so incredibly uncomfortable, and I know many will hate me for this, but I just felt overwhelmed by the whole thing. Maybe it makes me pathetic, but having to stand in the room where a party was just held to celebrate Jeff proposing to another woman hurt so damn bad. So I left. I told my friend, "Let's get the hell out of here," and we quietly walked out. We ended up staying in a hotel, and I was able to get an earlier flight home on Sunday. Now I'm back home and put my focus back on the nursery. I told my friends that I had talked to Jeff and I apologized if he still tried to reach me through them. I advised them to block him if it's too much. I know this isn't the end of things. I'm planning on reaching out to him again eventually. Even if he broke my heart, I still care about him, and I won't deny him a relationship with his kid, if that's what he really wants. I have no idea how it's going to work, and I'm only allowed to update once, so I apologize that I won't be able to tell anyone who cares how it all turns out. Thank you for the advice on my last post, even though everyone was down voting me and the post itself. It was nice to get opinions without bias. Update 2. I'm a little surprised to be writing this. I thought my update post was one and done, but I guess it got reposted on another sub yesterday and gained traction there, so a bunch of people have requested another update. I wasn't aware that people could make posts on their own profile either, so I feel dumb for thinking that I could only update once, but here we are. I greatly appreciate the newer comments supporting me. The few comments I got from the relationship advice sub were all in support of Jeff and downvoting everything I commented. I felt like I was crowned the queen of hell over there TBH. I haven't replied to any of the new comments because while most of you just read about the incident yesterday, for me it was 2 weeks ago. My hormones are all over the place due to my pregnancy, but thankfully I'm past the headspace I was in that day and when I first returned home. I do appreciate all the well wishes for me and my baby though. Before I give an update, I wanted to clear a few things up first. I've seen a lot of comments saying that Jeff proposed to Grace within a few months after they started dating. That's not true. Aside from the 1-month breakup where Jeff and I conceived the baby, they were together roughly a year and a half before the engagement, assuming they had no more breakups after ours. I don't know their full history, nor do I care to. Second, I feel like people were being a bit harsh on Jeff. I can honestly say he is not an abusive or controlling person. The man never so much as raised his voice at me in the 4 years we dated. He was a bit overbearing by demanding that I had to stay in California because that's where he is, but he just found out about the baby and was panicking that I'd disappear and he wouldn't be able to contact me, which to be fair that's exactly what I did, so I get it. I had a million thoughts, some wildly ridiculous when I think about it now, running through my own head when I found out too. Third, he wasn't juggling Grace and I at the same time like people think. She broke up with him. They both thought for good at the time. He and I started having sex again, but it wasn't like we were in a sequel of the lovey-dovey honeymoon phase. It was a weird and confusing time. We weren't talking about getting back together. I already had a start date for my new job back home and my move was scheduled. He didn't know any of that. I was still in love with him, of course, and I hoped he'd tell me he wanted to get back together and I would have stayed, but he didn't. Finding out he was getting back with Grace hurt, but I can't say I felt used for sex. I don't think either of us knew what the hell we were doing by sleeping together again in the first place. Jeff is a simple man overall. I promise he's not some supervillain taking advantage of women and playing with their emotions. I'm not making excuses for him. I wish it were that easy to say that he's a dirtbag and you should give me all your sympathy. In reality, I know who Jeff is as a person. Anyone who read my posts knows him as just a collection of bad and or questionable choices he made. If you summarize anyone up to just the bad they've done, of course they'd come off as an unlikable person. Jeff's not evil or manipulative, he's just got some stuff he probably should have worked through years ago, and admittedly I never thought his issues were that prevalent until we broke up. Plus, I'm positive that Grace knew we slept together while they were broken up. There's no way that was a shock to her. He would have told her himself, and even if he somehow hadn't, if Tanya knew then everyone else knew shortly after, guaranteed. Lastly, I appreciate everyone concerned about any custody issues that may arise from this. I was also amused by the people who were hyping themselves up thinking that I was delusional and actually going to be forced to put my baby on a plane by court order. I'm not sure why so many people on Reddit are used to dysfunctional relationships where judges and a huge custody battle need to be involved, but that's not us. Jeff and I were together and very much in love for years. It might be hard to picture that when you've only read about the shitty end of our relationship, but everything before the breakup was an ideal relationship, which is exactly why it hurt me so much when he ended it. Things are weird now, but we don't hate each other. Our default option, even in a complicated situation like this, is not taking this to court. That would be the last resort. I'm sure we'll work it out between ourselves long before it ever gets there. So on to the actual update. I planned on contacting Jeff after a couple weeks. I wanted to take time to gather my own thoughts and figure out what I wanted to say. Instead, I got phone calls from his number about a week after I returned home. He left a voicemail asking me to call him so we could talk. I was honestly furious because there's no way he should have been able to find my number unless somebody told him. It might not seem like it's a big deal, but to me I saw it as there being somebody who betrayed my trust in them. I texted him asking how he got my number. He said it wasn't important and that he wanted to talk. I said it is important to me, but he still didn't want to tell me. I told him we can talk when he tells me who he got my number from. So finally he told me who it was and sent a screenshot of the conversation when I asked for proof. It was the second least likely friend I would have expected to break my trust. That's a whole other story though. So we talked over FaceTime and he told me that he absolutely wants to be in our son's life. He doesn't know how it's going to work long term and neither do I. There was no threat of lawyers or his mom shouting grandparents' rights in the background like people were expecting. We're adults and we'll figure it out. The situation is not any easier to handle logistically, but emotions from that night have died down and we have cleared our heads to move forward with. He did, however, have the audacity to tell me that he hates that I didn't tell him much sooner and that I wasn't planning to tell him at all until Tanya found out because he thought we meant more to each other than that. I told him I thought we did too until he told me not to contact him unless I was dying. That shut him up quickly because he knows now that it was an extreme and unnecessary thing to say even if he wanted to cut contact with me. He's apologized for it and I apologize for not telling him about the baby myself. That's all we can really do. We're about to co-parent a child together, so we don't get the luxury of holding a grudge with one another over past slights. He also told me that he and Grace are no longer together. He claims that it was a mutual decision, but that sounds too easy to me. How do you go from newly engaged to broken up in 18 hours with it being a completely clean process? I'm guessing he's just sparing me the ugly details on what must have actually happened. I do feel bad for Grace. Other than incorrectly assigning blame for her ruined engagement party, she didn't do anything wrong. I don't know her personally, but her proposal night should have been one of the best nights of her life and it was ruined. I wouldn't want that for any woman. And because I know what everyone is going to say, no, I am not seeing this as an opportunity to get back together with Jeff. Honestly, my focus is on my son right now. I'm not thinking about jumping into a relationship with anyone, much less the man who broke my heart once already. I think Jeff and I need to figure out how we're going to co-parent first and foremost, and TBH, I want a man who loves me and chooses me for the person that I am, not because I happen to have given birth to his child. Plus, I don't know that I could ever get over that he proposed to Grace over me. Even if they broke off their engagement, I still want to know why she got a ring and I didn't, and I'm going to ask eventually, but I don't think any answer will ever make it okay to me. A lot of people said it wasn't that he didn't want marriage, he just didn't want it with me. I find that hard to believe because, as I said above, we really had an ideal relationship. Our breakup wasn't a buildup of issues. It really was as simple as, you want marriage and kids, I don't. Which I think most would agree is just the natural end of a relationship. If it really is as simple as I just wasn't the one, then I want him to look me in the eyes and tell me that himself. Jeff is a terrible liar. Even when he's lying for a good reason like a special surprise, he fidgets his fingers and can't maintain eye contact when he's lying. So if he looks me in the eyes and tells me his reason for why he chose to marry her and not me, I'll know if he's being honest. Jeff also told me that his mom wanted to send me stuff for the baby, so he asked for my address. I declined. I'm positive that there are no nefarious reasons and she's just excited and wants to help. This will be her first grandchild. However, I still felt a little uncomfortable giving them my home address. He's been texting me every day and calls me every night to say goodnight. Sometimes he wants to talk to the baby. It's a bit confusing for me because he broke up with me because he didn't want a kid. But now he wants to be involved to the point where he's going out of his way to contact me and ask if I need anything. It's strange and I don't really understand how his brain works, but like I said in my last post, I won't deny him a relationship with his kid if he wants one. Jeff wants to visit me in person to talk properly, but I told him I'm not sure if that's necessary right now. He asked to come last weekend and I said no. Then he asked again about possibly coming this weekend, but I told him I can't because I'm having my baby shower on Saturday. He wants to come. I'm not sure if that's a great idea. I'm not worried that he would say or do anything bad, and we're getting along over text, so I can tell that he just wants to be involved. But part of me feels like it's sort of playing house almost. I guess it wouldn't be a big deal if I made it clear he would be here as a friend and the father of the baby, but not as anything more. My parents don't think it's a good idea, but I know that's just because they don't like Jeff ever since he broke up with me. My sister, who is more level-headed, says that it could be a show of good faith that I'm serious about having a healthy co-parenting relationship, and it'll probably be easier to build that foundation now before the baby comes. My brothers don't care either way, but they say they're ready to beat up Jeff if he does or says anything stupid. He won't, but I love my brothers for always looking out for me. I'm not sure what I'm going to decide, but I know Jeff needs an answer soon so he can book a flight and a hotel room if I do say yes. I'm open to suggestions. Update 3. Hi everyone. I've been requested to give an update on the baby shower and whether or not I let Jeff attend. This post is rather lengthy as it covers a whole weekend, so I'm including a TLDR at the bottom. So I did end up allowing Jeff to come to my baby shower. When he called me the Monday night before my Saturday baby shower, I brought it up. I told him he could come if he agreed to 3 rules. 1. We are not together, don't touch me, hug me, or put your hands on my stomach unless I say it's okay. 2. I agreed that we needed to have a serious talk, however it only takes place after the baby shower, and to keep any awkward vibe because we have things we want to get out of the way, ignored until after the baby shower. 3. You stay in a hotel. I wasn't housing anyone. I needed my home to be my own place to return to if things got too overwhelming. Unsurprisingly, he was fine with all of those conditions and was just happy that he could come. I also told him he was free to invite his mother if she wanted to attend. He was relieved because she did mention wanting to come with him if he came. Everything was settled until the next day when he called to ask me if his brother and sister could come too. His stepdad had a prior commitment and wouldn't be able to attend. I shouldn't have been surprised Jeff asked about his siblings though. His family is really close-knit. They show up for each other and everything. I've never had any issues with anyone in his family. I always got along with his parents and siblings, especially his sister. I said it was fine. I didn't really care as long as they understood that I was the guest of honor at my baby shower and not a hostess, so I wouldn't be checking in with them the entire time. His sister also messaged me privately to ask if I was really okay with them all coming and that she and their younger brother could stay home if I didn't want them all there. It was totally unnecessary because I already said yes, but I really appreciated that she did that. Their flight got in on Friday afternoon. My parents decided to host a dinner for Jeff's family. They don't like Jeff anymore, but they felt that since he and I are now tied together for the next 18 years minimum, our family should be acquainted at least. When they got to my parents' house, the greetings were as awkward as expected. Jeff leaned down to my stomach and said hi to the baby. The baby kicked, and when I told Jeff, he got excited, so I offered to let him feel. I figured he should be able to have that moment. His mom was ecstatic that the baby was kicking, saying that he already knows his daddy voice. She was so happy that I didn't have the heart to tell her that the baby had already been kicking for the past half hour before they got there. Dinner was fine. It was mostly talk about the baby shower, but we did also go around the table and everyone suggested names. I have to admit I'm a bit bummed about the naming. I was happy that I had sole decision power when it was just me, but now I have to get Jeff's approval too, which sucks. Some of the names he suggested were awful tbh. The day of the baby shower was long, but it went perfectly. Luckily Tanya was over 2,000 miles away, so she couldn't ruin the event. It was relatively big as my family has always done co-ed baby showers. We even had some games specifically for the men in attendance. I felt a little bit bad about Jeff just being a guest, so we tried to include him last minute by letting him give the guys the rules for the bottle chugging game. It was tea, not beer of course, and we added a last-minute best dad joke competition that he got to decide the winner on. We did also take some pictures together. As I said in my last post, I didn't want to play house with him, but honestly I was having such a great time that I didn't even mind that both sides of the family suggested pictures. More importantly, he asked for my consent before putting his arm around me and touching my stomach for the pictures, which was such a relief that he was respecting the boundaries I gave him before he came. After the baby shower ended, I invited Jeff's family to my house. I mentioned not wanting to give my address to him in my last post. Some people misunderstood that as me trying to stay hidden forever. Obviously, he was going to know my address once the baby came. I think what those people failed to realize is that it was all happening so fast. Jeff got my number one day, and the next day he was asking for my address on his mom's behalf to send baby stuff. It was a lot and far too soon. But since everything was going great, I didn't mind so much inviting them to see my house. His mom cried when she saw the nursery. Then I started crying with her cause I'm a hormonal mess some days. The nursery is basically finished. I had just bought a different shade of blue paint because I didn't like the one I initially chose after looking at it for a couple weeks. I was planning on it being repainted the next week, but Jeff and his brother offered to do it while they were there. I said no obviously because they were guests. My dad chimed in to say to let him, Jeff, do it because it's about time he stepped up to help. Obviously my dad knows that Jeff just found out about the baby recently and I reminded him of that, but my parents were the ones who comforted me every time I cried when I first moved back home and again when I found out I was pregnant. It's going to take a while for them to warm up to Jeff again. So Jeff and his brother painted a first coat with my dad while I talked to Jeff's sister outside. I asked her about Grace, but she wouldn't tell me what happened. She told me that was a conversation between me and Jeff. She did tell me that her whole family tried to talk Jeff out of proposing because it was too fast, but he insisted so they supported him. The only other thing she said was that Tanya has been banned from her family's events for the foreseeable future, and their families aren't on good terms as Tanya's parents don't think what she did was a big deal. After the guys finished painting, everyone except my sister and Jeff left. Jeff and I decided to talk that night. My sister was in the living room in case it didn't go well and I needed emotional support. After Jeff left his family, he and I talked in my bedroom. My feet were killing me and I needed to lie down, so I did that and Jeff sat on the other end of the bed. Neither of us knew how to start, so I just asked him point blank why he changed his mind about kids. I reminded him that he broke up with me because he didn't want marriage or kids. He said that it's true that he didn't want kids and that he's still afraid he'll screw it up somehow, but that the baby already exists and so he already loves him and wants to be present for him. I then asked about Grace. I wanted to know why he proposed to her and not me. It's not relevant now, but I'm still human and I wanted to know what was different about her. He told me that he was never scared of marriage. He meant it when we discussed plans about marriage after I was done with school. He wanted to be married to me. It was just the kids part that he couldn't do. He says that he just added marriage into his reasoning for our breakup because he felt like it would be easier for me to accept. In his head, I might have been able to overlook the kids thing, at least for a few years, but he knew if he said he didn't want marriage either, then I wouldn't stay. I asked why he didn't just talk to me about it instead. He broke my heart because he thought he was setting me free. As for why he proposed to Grace, she was on the same page as in regarding children. She didn't want them. He said he talked to her about getting a vasectomy and she was on board with his decision. He admitted that they moved too fast. She was pressuring him to propose to her and she wanted the big party. So the proposal wasn't a surprise event. Everyone knew what it was going to be, including Grace, as she practically planned the thing herself. All of his family tried to talk him out of it and wait a bit longer, but he was afraid that he would lose another woman and didn't want to make the same mistake again. His words, not mine. I asked why they broke up because I didn't believe him that it was a clean mutual decision. He said it was mutual but a bit messy. Apparently he and Grace talked the next day after everything went down. She told him that I ran away and to just let me go. She said she was willing to reconsider kids if he realized that he changed his mind, but that she didn't want to be a stepmom to my child. She basically gave him an ultimatum. He could choose either her or the baby, but not both. He asked her for the ring back right then and there. Apparently she threw it at him along with a few other heavier objects. He says they're fully done. He tried to do the sweet talk thing, telling me that he's glad it was me and not her that got pregnant. He says I saved him for making a huge mistake in marrying her. He regrets everything and wishes that he could redo the last 2 years and never break up with me. Then he asked if I could ever see us getting back together. I got frustrated at that point and told him that he can't just keep jumping back and forth between us. He tried to defend himself, and while I agree that I don't think he does it with ill intent, it is what he's doing. I told him that he keeps letting his fear make hasty decisions for him and he needs to work on that with a therapist. I'm about to raise a baby. I don't need to be raising a man too. He did agree to go to therapy to work on his issues. Whether he actually does it or not, I don't know. I did make it clear that he needs to go into an understanding that it's for his and our son's benefit and not just to win me back, because that's not my focus at all right now. That was pretty much it for our talk. At some point he ended up laying down beside me so we were facing each other. There was no touching, we just talked while laying beside each other. I got sleepy and he left in an Uber back to his hotel. They were supposed to leave on Sunday, but their flight back home was delayed by a day due to the weather in California. So the next morning they all came over and Jeff and his brother finished the second coat of paint on the nursery. Came out perfectly. I'm really glad I went with the second color choice. I made the guys lunch as a thank you for their work, even though they were both happy to do it for their son and nephew. Jeff told me that he's planning on moving to my home state within the next month, because he wants to be here for the baby's birth. His job does offer remote work, so he could do it without having to find a new job. As of now, he says it would be temporary but admitted that he doesn't know if he'll be able to leave once the baby is here. We'll see what happens. They left the next day while I was at work. Jeff stopped by my work to say goodbye in person. My coworkers all melted when they saw him say bye to the baby and promise him that he'd be back soon. They all think I should give him another chance for the baby's sake, although I suspect that most of them are also easily swayed by the fact that Jeff is 6 feet 3 inches in and conventionally attractive, which they were constantly bringing up at my baby shower and when he came to say bye. Jeff and his family made it back home safe. I haven't heard much else about his plans to move here, but I imagine that will take a while anyway. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Discovered my husband was sleeping with our son's 18-year-old girlfriend. I kicked him out, filed for divorce, and am fighting to prove he groomed her and put him on the sex offender registry. I, 41F, am a stay-at-home mom. My husband, 48M, whom I'll call Paul, works in finance. We have been married for nearly 20 years. We have 2 kids whom we'll call Eric, our 18-year-old son, currently a senior in high school, and Mary, our 15-year-old daughter. They are both the lights of my life. My marriage with my husband has grown somewhat stale over the years for a myriad of reasons, such as his work schedule and how I've aged poorly since we first met. Our son Eric has a girlfriend, 18F, whom he's been dating since they were freshmen in high school. We'll call her Amy. Eric absolutely adores Amy. She's his first love, and she's someone I've always considered as family. This makes the whole situation emotionally excruciating for me. Last week, I inadvertently saw my husband's phone screen and got a glimpse of a text thread between my husband and Amy, our son's girlfriend. I read what looked like a message of her telling him that she misses sucking his penis. I froze in place in complete disbelief. I spent most of the day convincing myself that I must have misread what I saw. However, I didn't misread it because, over the last several days, I discovered a file on his computer filled with tons of BDSM porn. He clearly has a porn addiction. He also has saved photos of Amy from her Instagram on his computer. Although they weren't inappropriate, she was fully clothed, it was still the proof I needed to confirm that I wasn't going crazy. I also looked at his phone during opportune moments and saw more of their interactions. I wish I had never looked. They were filled with mean, horrible things said at my expense, with him constantly comparing me to her. He would call me fat and old, among other things, with Amy LLNG. I've always had hunches or paranoid feelings that Paul has been cheating on me, but never in a million years could I have fathomed something like this. Last month, I found a thong in our bedroom that I know wasn't mine. I turned a blind eye to it, being naive and acting like it was maybe our daughter's, even though that made zero sense. Not only is he cheating on me, but he's betraying our son. I'm completely devastated. I don't even think words can adequately describe the dread, anger, and shock I feel right now. I'm totally overwhelmed on how to handle this because, obviously, action needs to be taken, but I'm terrified of what kind of psychic blow this will be for my son. I have no idea how to even broach this completely effed up topic with him. I wouldn't wish this predicament on my worst enemy. I can't even believe I married this scumbag in the first place. And then my mind started to race, realizing that I started noticing specifically unusual behavior from him around the same time Amy turned 18. Was he waiting for her to turn 18 before pursuing an affair? There's so many layers to all of this, and I'm completely paralyzed with fear and dread about it all. None of it makes any sense. How did this happen? Am I that much of a stupid idiot that I let all of this happen under my watch? Eric adores Amy, and the thought of revealing this sickening truth to him terrifies me. The impact on his young heart and mind could be devastating. My heart aches for Eric and Mary, who are completely innocent bystanders. I haven't confronted my husband about this because I'm frankly scared of the domino effect. I don't know who to turn to first about this. I share my story not for sympathy but in search of understanding and perhaps advice from those who might have had to grapple with deep betrayal. Thank you for listening. Further info from OP to not have my initial post be long-winded because I didn't think I needed to get into the minutiae of this. I didn't bother going into those details how I inadvertently saw it was this. He was on his phone. He did not have iMessage open currently on the screen, but the application was still open. You know how on the iPhone, when you swipe up and it shows all of the applications that are open and you can close them. When he was closing out the applications, something he does compulsively, I noticed. It's not like he was some kind of idiotic buffoon having a message open for all to see. I saw he forgot he had the application running when he swiped up from a completely different app. Also, I did say in my post that I went back to his phone to actually solidify my suspicion on a different day, so you are incorrect in asserting that I'm now magically changing my story. I am being consistent. Now for some comments. Comment. Okay, if she's freshly 18, isn't this illegal? There's no way they weren't doing anything illegal before she turned into an adult. Also, even if so, the age gap is over 3 decades. Her husband is suspect. U.S. police immediately. Opie. Up. She's been 18 for 5 months now. I haven't been able to gauge when the affair started. I'm trying my hardest to figure that out. He deletes his texts every couple of weeks, it seems like, so I haven't been able to pinpoint when this whole thing started. Opie also added, "Thank you, everyone, for overwhelming support. I'm sorry if I haven't responded to your private messages. I'll get to it when I can. Dealing with a lot right now and taking a lot of steps that need to be taken. I'm trying to be smart and strategic with this truly surreal and terrible situation I'm in. I want to be clear that not telling my son about this was never something I was considering. I didn't mean to make it seem that way. I was just saying I'm intensely dreading it, but obviously, it needs to be addressed. It's one part of the many steps of my overall plan. I'm currently playing dumb and collecting as much evidence as I can so I can be prepared for anything and everything. I'm going to protect myself, and I'm going to make sure I don't put myself in any potential harm's way. I'll post a more thorough update soon when I can, but please know you've all touched my heart so much and made me feel less alone. Update 1. I am divorcing my husband because he cheated on me with our son's 18-year-old girlfriend. March 22, 2024. I'm using pseudonyms for confidentiality. I shared a situation a few days ago on another subreddit involving my 41F husband, Paul, 48M, our children Eric, 18M, and Mary, 15F. I discovered that Paul was having an affair with our son's 18-year-old girlfriend, Amy. My son has been dating her since they were freshmen in high school. My brother connected me to a very tough junkyard dog type lawyer. I saved screenshots of all his conversations with Amy. I was only able to get the last 3 months from my cloud. The conversations were mostly flirty and dirty talk. It was hard to stomach. Completely sleazy. And I saw several negative things said about me. His call history showed he talks with her for hours pretty consistently. He uses dating apps. I took screenshots of his profiles and all of the active chats he has with his matches. It's very clear he uses a filter to seek out girls who are 18 to 22 or so. I copied all of his files from the computer. He goes on sex chat rooms and forums, and he spends a ton of money on OnlyFans. I rummaged through every possible hiding spot I could think of in the house. He had various toys, blindfolds, cuffs, lubricants, etc. He also had different outfits, which looked kind of like a girls' Catholic school uniform and a French maid type outfit too. I picked up Eric and Mary from school, and we all drove to my brother's. They were able to sense something was awry when I picked them up. I delicately told them the entire situation, and I broke down crying. Mary had the most anger, even more than Eric. I met with Amy's mother and told her everything. She confiscated Amy's phone and gave me the entire chat log. It only dated back 3 months ago, like on my husband's cloud, almost as if they both deleted the messages at the same time. She told me Amy sobbed when confronted. Amy basically told her mother that she will never understand and that she and him are in love. I don't want to get into too many details with what else she was saying, but suffice to say, It's very easy to assume that my husband slowly and methodically became a sage-like figure in her life, making her feel she could rely on him, and he took advantage of the fact that she came from a broken home. Amy is also non-stop insistent that their friendship only became romantic/sexual recently. And before that, she said he was more of a friend and mentor. I confronted Paul over Zoom. The look on his face was scary. He became red and looked so sweaty. He had anger and panic in his eyes. His tone of voice was very defensive and frightening. He kept yelling the word context over and over again, and that none of that happened. He was unable to speak without constant stutters and intensity. Nothing really made any sense to me. I refused to tell him where I was, and he said I had no right to take his kids away from him. And then he abruptly left the Zoom. My lawyer is filing for temporary sole custody of Mary and a restraining order. Mary is still the most angry. She's totally furious with her dad and Amy. Justifiably so, of course. Mary is recollecting moments and times she watched her dad interact with her friends, and she's in knots about it. Eric is very clearly hurting, but he's so strong and very level-headed. He wants to see a therapist. The maturity my kids are showing makes me proud. They don't deserve this at all. We made the authorities aware of everything. I plan on being completely unforgiving and ruthless in this divorce. I'm reflecting on how I've been treated and how it's made me a shell of myself and how I've had a very negative opinion of myself because of him over the last 20 years. I don't want to let this scumbag get away with it. I want to reinvent myself and move on stronger than ever. Now for some comments. Comment. How is your son holding up? What has developed between him and Amy? Opie. He hasn't spoken to Amy yet since finding out the news, and I'm not sure if he ever will again. Comment. Have you confirmed if the thong you found was Amy's? The situation is effed up. Opie. I confirmed that it wasn't my daughter's. She said it wasn't hers, and I know it wasn't mine. So who else's could it be? Comment. Wait, are you saying that they effed in the master bedroom? How? Opie, yes, I believe he did. Opie. Both me and my son are going to get tested and checked out as well. There's no telling how many different women he's been sleeping around with. As for Amy, her mom has been in contact with me, and Amy has been threatening to run away with him because they are in love. Update 2. March 27, 2024. Thank you again for all the love and encouragement. It gives me comfort and means so much to me. I've received many comments and messages accusing me of faking this story, which oddly also provides comfort because all of this feels unreal even to me. It validates my own feelings that there are people out there who can't even fathom this being true. I wish it were fake. I've been focusing on and worrying about how others are feeling over this, somewhat ignoring my own feelings, which I'm trying to change. I range from anger to numbness like a light switch. We're all safe and still at my brother's house. We're very careful and his house is secure. Paul has tried to call my cell phone several times a day. I am refusing to interact with him, and I will have my lawyer handle all correspondence. He scares me, frankly. My brother has a very secure house with an alarm system and deadbolt locks. We feel safe with him. Both my son and I got checked out and tested. It appears so far that we're both clean based on the immediate rapid tests, but in the coming days we'll know for certain when the lab results come in. I'm not overly concerned. Eric is scheduled to see a therapist early next week, which is very good and needed. He's not himself right now. He seems a bit shell-shocked, and I am concerned. He internalizes a lot, and it's hard to get a read on what's going on in his head. That being said, he's thoughtful and has been talking with me, asking me how I'm doing and everything. He's not interested in corresponding with his dad at all. He calls only my cell phone, and he hasn't tried to reach out to either Eric or Mary. I get the sense that Paul is extremely nervous. He's scared, and I think he deep down knows that if investigated thoroughly, he would be in big trouble. That's what my gut is telling me. I still think about the Zoom call with him, and the more I think about it, the more it looked like he was a man whose entire world was crashing down on him. The panic in his face was very apparent. I offered Mary for me to make an appointment with a therapist as well, but she doesn't want to see one yet. She said she's open to it eventually but wants time to herself. She's been asking her friends about her dad and if they experienced any creepiness from him. Her friends were open and honest with her, and apparently they felt like he stared a lot and sensed his hovering presence whenever they were over. One of Mary's friends went so far as to say that she felt like he was checking her out a lot, like looking at her rear and complimenting the color of her yoga pants. At the time, no issue was brought up about it, but in light of everything that has been happening, it seems strange now. He would sit himself in different areas or vantage points to get a good view of her. She claimed he also asked questions about what kind of friend group or which clique they were in at school. He kept asking about if they were popular girls. I'm completely embarrassed that they had this experience at our house. As for updates on Amy, which is the main reason why I wanted to write this update, I completely agree that she is also a victim. A lot of people have been emphasizing that, and I agree. I've done everything I could in my own power to indirectly get her opportunities to get help. Like I said, I told her mother, and she's been updating me on everything. Amy, unfortunately, is still living in her deluded reality, and I can only pray that she'll eventually come to her senses. She doesn't want to see any doctors or therapists at all and has been constantly trying to reach Paul because, again, she believes that they are in love. From what I've been told, she hasn't been able to get hold of him, and he's been avoiding communication with her completely. Amy blames me for that and believes I took away his devices and I'm very controlling. Any truth that her mother tries to convey to her is met with conspiracy theories and hostility. Amy looks at me as a villain and still sees Paul through rose-colored glasses. Her mother showed her screenshots of his dating app profiles and matches, and she refuses to believe it, saying I photoshopped it. According to her mom, Amy keeps saying things like, everyone is just mad because she found herself a real man, and that I'm jealous because she takes better care of him than I do. It's in line with some of the conversations I screenshot, where a lot of what Paul says is him complaining about things I don't do for him sexually. Right now, she's insistent that she and Paul will be together in the long run. Ugh, he's honestly a slimeball. I can only hope that Amy comes to her senses, but me directly intervening doesn't feel like it would be productive at the moment. Maybe eventually, though. Now for some comments. Comment. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Reading all the previous posts, I honestly get the vibe that your husband wasn't a very good one to begin with. Someday, when you're ready, you're going to find someone who thinks you're glorious as you age. Your son is also going to be okay. He's gotten a lesson on exactly how men shouldn't behave. A painful one, but in time, he's going to realize that Amy was groomed and abused. It sounds like she was vulnerable, and your ex took advantage of a child who was in a bad situation. Hopefully, once Amy has had some time to process just how messed up this was, she'll tell the police the whole story. I fully believe something was happening before she turned 18. Opie. I believe stuff happened before she was 18 too. Comment. Do you think they kept that relationship secret for most of Eric and Amy's relationship? What a disgusting father and pig if that is truth. Opie. I'm not sure when things got actually physical or romantic, but I do think his grooming started as soon as she came into the picture, when Eric started dating her freshman year. This mentor and a friend that Amy alluded to had to start right away. And the way she's acting now, being so indebted and believing every single thing he says, shows that his effect on her had to be over a long period of time. She only turned 18 like 5 months ago. Her behavior and infatuation for him seemed so strong that it couldn't possibly be only 5 months of them being together. Comment. If they are consenting adults, then there is nothing to report. This is a personal problem that needs to be dealt with by attorneys and the people involved. People are way too jumpy to snap to the police to fix their problems anymore. OP is handling this the correct way. If any legal issues come into play, then her attorney will do the right thing. OP. The only thing we can really hang our hat on is the possibility of Amy having an epiphany of the reality of her situation, and she opens up candidly about when it began. But because she's 18 currently and has no interest in saying or doing anything that could potentially put Paul in legal trouble, nothing really can be done unless they find out about other girls that I have no idea about yet. Update 3. The support again has been overwhelming, and I'm very grateful. Sadly, I've received a lot of negative/accusatory/slut-shaming/harassing private messages from people here who think I'm faking the story. Someone made a comment on some post somewhere claiming that my story has been debunked, and people believe that person. I've seen an uptick in negative messages accusing me of making this up for money. I'm not asking for money at all. Coming here was completely rooted in emotional desperation, and I didn't expect anyone to get invested in my story this way. But again, I'm not looking for anything out of this. I have no reason to lie. I'm not gaining anything from this. If you don't believe me, that's fine. I don't care. But the only thing I ask is to not cross the line and start sending me private messages that are mean-spirited or accusatory. The only reason I'm continuing to post is because of those of you who've sent me love here, and the support really lifted my spirits. As for the divorce, it's very much underway. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it all because it's ongoing, and I want to make sure everything is going to go smoothly. I got temporary custody of Mary. Paul also has to pay temporary child support. There's a protective order. Paul can't contact us or come near us right now. We're just focusing on getting through this legal mess. Again, not getting into specifics because I don't want to mess anything up, but what I'll say is, I'm very confident, divorce aside, that there's overwhelming evidence against Paul that will get him in serious trouble, and it will impact him for the rest of his life. I'm sure eventually I can share more about that. I know a lot of people are concerned about his predatory ways, and I just wanted to convey this, even though I have to be vague right now. Justice will come. All of your concern about how my kids are doing psychologically means a lot to me. Eric has been to therapy twice over the last 2 weeks. I know some people thought I was dismissive of him and acting like he's doing okay. I very much know that he's hurting internally, and we're doing everything we can to make sure he knows he is supported and loved. My brother has been amazing in spending time with Eric and Mary, and both of them have confided in him about a lot. My brother has a very healthy marriage, and both he and his wife have really stepped up to the plate for all of us. Mary has not seen a therapist yet, but she promises that she will be open to seeing one soon. Her anger has mostly turned into sadness, I noticed, and I hope I can get her to see a therapist soon. Her friends have played a key role in this whole thing, and that's something that Mary has been grappling with as well. I know a lot of people are invested in the well-being of Amy as well. There were a lot of questions about whether Eric and Amy would still see each other at school. It sounded like they go to the same school, but they do not. Eric and Amy went to the same junior high school and knew each other even then, but Amy ended up going to an all-girls Catholic high school, while Eric and Mary stayed in the public school system. We all lived in the same town, and over the summer heading into freshman year is when they were getting to know each other and when they started dating. I wish I had a better Amy update, but it's gotten a lot worse since the last update. Paul has actually been seeing Amy despite her mother trying to force her not to see him. She tells me that Amy says she's 18 and an adult, and she can do what she wants. Her mother is in a precarious spot because if she kicks Amy out of the house for defying her, something that she has threatened to do, which I think is a mistake, she would just run to Paul. Apparently, the time she spends with Paul has increased over the last week despite the fact that Paul initially ghosted her when all of this first hit the fan. There were some days where Amy would just be gone for hours on end. There's only so much I could do with the Amy situation, but again, I do believe things will turn around soon with that, given what I know about Paul and what's to come. I can only pray that Amy can get help and guidance when more shit hits the fan. I'm doing everything I can with my own kids and my own mental health, and Amy's mom knows she has my support, and that's all I could really provide. Now for some comments. Comment. TBH, the only way that Amy will see how messed up Paul is when he eventually sleeps with someone else or he accuses her of seducing him. Even if he ends up as a sex offender, I'm not sure if that's enough to convince her that he's a creep and dangerous. Now I'm curious to what Paul's intentions are. He ghosted her and now all of a sudden, they're meeting up again. Worst case scenario, he's going to have her falsely testify, which I don't think will take much convincing. Amy, honestly, you and Amy's mom did what you could. The best thing Amy's mom could do is sit and wait, but don't kick her out. Let her know she'll be there for Amy, and she'll still have a roof over her head, and pray she snaps out of it soon, instead of years later when she has burned bridges and wasted her life on a man who took advantage and ruined everyone else's lives. Comment. Take care of yourself and please don't stress about these internet trolls. They are mean, heartless, soulless humans that have nothing better to do in life than tear people down that are already hurting. Though I'm also a stranger, your story moved me, and I'm so sad that you have to go through this. Please take care of yourself too. Sounds like both kids are doing okay now, but you need to be well too. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Adoptive parents took me and only for the money and tried to stop me from going to college, so I ran away from home and met my grandma, who was sending all the money to take care of me. Hello? I am a 17-year-old girl about to turn 18 in a couple of weeks, and I'm living with my friend right now because I recently left my adoptive parents' house to move in with her because I don't trust her anymore. I don't have any other family, and technically, even they are not my family, especially not after what I found out about them. They adopted me when I was 11 years old, almost 6 years ago, after my parents passed away in a deadly car crash. My parents had eloped, so they did not have any contact with their family members. They had tried to reach out to their respective families a couple of years after I was born but had been rejected. I don't know for what reason. I never got to find out either because they had always promised me that they would tell me when I was old enough, but by the time I was old, they had already passed away. My adoptive parents, who I had been living with ever since my parents passed away, used to be really close friends with my parents when they were alive. Let's call them Jack and Nora since I'm obviously not going to call them Mom and Dad. I never have and I never will. Anyway, after my parents passed away in that car accident, they decided to adopt me. My parents did not have any contact with their family, and when their lawyer tried to reach out to them to ask if they would be willing to take me in, they refused to do so. So, there was no other option but to live with Jack and Nora. Otherwise, I would end up in the foster home system, and that was not something that seemed like a feasible option for me. Back then, Jack and Nora were pretty nice to me. I did not have a particularly close relationship with them, but I knew very well that if I did not agree to live with them, things would be even bleaker for me. And I knew that they were close friends of my parents before they passed away. They did not have any children of their own, so it would be reasonable for me to go live with them instead. So, they legally adopted me and then treated me nicely for the first couple of years. They never loved me like my parents and were never that affectionate or caring. I missed my parents every single day ever since they passed away, but I knew that this was my new life now, and I tried my best to assimilate into their family, learn their ways, and live according to their lifestyle. There was nothing too big that I wanted to complain about for the first few years, except for the fact that I still missed my parents every single day. It was recommended that I'd be taken to therapy, but they never bothered to take me because they thought that it was all a bunch of psychological mumbo-jumbo and it would not help me. So, they would tell me to just distract myself and stuff instead of focusing on the pain. I don't know if that was meant to be helpful, but anyway, that was their idea of advice, and that was the only part that would annoy me occasionally when I was younger. But after that, I learned that this was their way of trying to help me cope with the grief of losing my parents, so I learned not to mind whenever they would say asinine things like that. Jack and Nora started becoming even more distant from me once I started growing older. They were already not very affectionate to begin with, and with time, they started increasing the distance between us. They would avoid interacting with me and would not speak to me if they could help it. Around the age of 15, I almost started feeling like I was living with strangers, and these people did not care about me one bit. And I think I was spot on about that. I was living with people who did not want anything to do with me. I don't even know why they had adopted me in the first place, since all along they were just planning to treat me like I did not even matter to them and they did not even want me around. I used to feel so confused and lost about why they were treating me like that, but every time that I would try to confront them about it or talk with them about it, they would just tell me that I was imagining things and they were always there for me, so I did not need to be so paranoid. Well, that was all a load of crap. Now that I know the truth, I'll get to what I'm talking about in a couple of minutes. But before that, let me just tell you guys about what happened a couple of weeks ago. I think about a couple of weeks ago, I was finally done with my finals week and about to graduate from high school. I had already applied to a bunch of colleges, and I had also started saving up for college since last year. I did not know exactly how I was going to manage to be able to pay for everything because I was not sure if my adoptive parents would be willing to cover my college tuition. I hadn't talked to Jack or Nora about any of this because even though I knew they would have the money and would find it very easy to cover my expenses if I wanted to go to college, I was not sure if they would be willing to do it. Money was never the issue, their willingness to do it was in question. And I thought that it would be too weird to ask them for money when I barely even had a relationship with them. So, I had taken a bunch of jobs after school to save up some money, but that was never going to be enough to cover the cost of going to college, and I had always known that. So, I knew that eventually I would have to talk to them about it. I was just putting it off for as long as I could because I did not want to go through with that awkward conversation. Anyway, once I had graduated from high school, I decided that I would have to talk to them since I had even heard back from a couple of colleges, and I did not want to put this off any longer. So, I decided to rip off the Band-Aid once and for all, and I had that conversation with them 2 weeks ago, which did not go very well. I did not intend to ask them to provide for me all my life or whatever it was that they misconstrued my words to be. I just wanted to talk to them about how I was going to go ahead because I really definitely wanted to go to college and make a life for myself. But to be able to do that, I needed to take out a student loan, and even for that, I would require their help because they were the only adults in my life who could help me out here. Or I would have to work through college, which was going to be a really stressful option for me. But before I came to that conclusion, I had to try to talk to them about what they planned on doing. So, with the intention of that, I spoke to them and I asked them if they had anything in mind for when I was going to go to college. They were kind of shocked because we had never discussed this before, and that was my fault. I acknowledged that. Anyway, when I asked them about it, they took a couple of seconds to think about it, and they told me that there was no way I was going to college. And then it was my time to be shocked because I couldn't even believe that they were saying that to me at the very last moment after I had already applied to a bunch of places. They told me that I was forbidden from going to college because that would require a lot of money, and they believed that I needed to stay here and work for a couple of more years, gather some real-life experience, and then maybe I would be ready for college when I would be able to pay for it with my own money and would not have to rely on anybody else. I was really pissed off and told them that they had no right to say that, and they told me that they had every right to say whatever they wanted to me because I actually owed my life to them. Because had they not adopted me when my parents had passed away, I would probably be on the streets right now and would never have known any of the luxury that I had because they had adopted me. So, they pretty much own me and I would have to listen to them. After that, in a fit of anger, I made the mistake of telling them that they did not need to help me because I had been saving money for the past couple of months, and I did have some amount, so I would use that to leave their house and then I would make sure I never had to see them again. I did not need any more favors from them. I told them that they really hated me so much that they never should have adopted me in the first place. That really set them off, and they told me that since I did have some money saved up, I could do the honorable thing and start paying them back for everything that they had done for me. I was dumbstruck by the things that they were saying, and I just didn't know how to respond, so I just walked out of that conversation. But after that, they told me that they were serious about the things that they had said. I really was not going to be able to go to college because the money that I had put together so that I would be able to afford college, they were going to take that away from me. Since I had so much to say, I would have to pay them back for all the things that I had said. And even though I knew that I was not legally bound to do any of it, I was too proud by nature, and I couldn't help myself, so I told them that they could take whatever they wanted. In the future, I would earn probably 100 times more, and then I would throw that money in their faces. Since then, we have not been on talking terms, and they seem pretty happy about what they have accomplished. They have forbidden me from going to college and have decided to take the money that I had saved up for myself in the last couple of months. I was at my wit's end about what to do next because I really did not want to give up on this opportunity, and at the same time, I did not want to be a beggar and have to ask anybody else for money. So, I decided to start with some digging to find out the reason that they were acting this way. For so long, I had never bothered to question exactly why they seemed to dislike living with me but still wanted to keep me around because it would have been very easy for them to kick me out or tell me that they do not want me anymore and never even adopted me in the first place. There must have been some reason. I never bothered to find out, but now I thought that it was about time that I started to find out why things were the way they were. For the first couple of days, I only kept brainstorming about what I wanted to do. I went through all of their social media accounts, but sadly, neither Jack nor Nora have a very active social media presence. And I don't even know why I bothered with that because I knew that it would be a dead end, but then I didn't know what else to do. I had half a mind to reach out to a couple of their friends, but then that would be way too risky because then there would be a very good chance that they would not even believe what I was telling them and would rat me out instead. And I didn't want that to happen, so it was really frustrating for the first couple of days. But then I thought that instead of going into their background, I could start where everything had begun. So, I decided to speak to my parents' lawyer, who had finalized all the adoption details and paperwork when Jack and Nora were in the process of taking me in. I don't know why, but I just had a gut feeling that it would lead me somewhere. And bingo, it did. It took a lot of work for me to find out the contact number of that lawyer, but I knew him by name, and I used to call him Uncle Jacob, fake name. I had interacted with him a lot when I was younger, right in the aftermath of my parents passing away. Slowly but steadily, I had sort of lost touch with him, but I remembered his name and how he looked, so I was able to find him through the power of the internet. And when I found out his email address, I dropped him a message and sent it to him via email. I did not talk about much. I just mentioned that I had something important to talk about with him because I did not want to leave a paper trail, and then I gave him my number so he could call me. 2 days after that, I finally received a call from him, and he sounded pretty confused as to why I was reaching out to him after so many years. But then I told him everything that had been happening, and I had been keeping this in for a really long time, so it was necessary for me to get it all out there in the open. I told him about how Jack and Nora had been treating me, and I asked him if there was anything that I needed to know because this sort of behavior, it was just confusing and weird, and I really wanted to know the truth about what was going on because I was sure that there was more to this than whatever people were letting me in on. And I wanted to find out what was happening, and I'm so glad that I did because that's how I was finally able to find out the real reason why Jack and Nora had adopted me in the first place. It took a little bit of convincing, but I was finally able to get it through to my parents' lawyer that I was actually in trouble and I couldn't go on like this. So, he finally broke his promise to the people that he had made that promise to and told me the truth about what was actually going on. He told me that indeed, my parents had been cut off by their families, and they had rejected the offer to adopt me and take me in after my parents passed away since they did not want to have any contact with me. But my grandmother on my dad's side of the family probably felt bad about what was going on and decided to reach out to the lawyer in private and told him that she would be willing to take care of me all my life financially, but he just had to look for a family to take me in. Every little expense of mine would be taken care of, and she would make sure that she sent a big fat check to the family adopting me to make sure that there was some incentive to take me in. And she wanted somebody to let me live with them until I was an adult. She told me that she would make sure that she did this until I turned 18 and decided to go to college, after which she would only take care of my college funds, but that money would come into my account directly, and my adoptive parents would not have to be the middleman anymore. Jack and Nora knew about this since the lawyer had told them, and that's really why they had adopted me, because of the child support money that my grandmother would be sending them. She also had a clause that said that her identity would have to remain a secret because she did not want anybody to be able to find out what she was doing since her family seriously did not want any sort of contact with me. I don't know why that is. I'll find out later and let you guys know. But for now, I know for a fact that Jack and Nora did not adopt me out of the goodness of their heart, as they had claimed to, but for the child support checks that they knew they would be cashing every single month, thanks to my grandma. Now, honestly, everything makes so much more sense since I know what Jack and Nora really intended on doing. And after I found out the truth, I decided to leave their house that day because I was not going to allow this to carry on anymore. Ever since I left, I've been living with a friend of mine, and I've been trying to convince my parents' lawyer to put me in touch with my grandma because I think she's the only way that I can get out of this mess. And I know he was not supposed to tell me the truth, and that put him in breach of the contract that everybody had signed, but honestly, I don't even care about any contract or anything now. I wanted to go to college and fix my life, and my grandma is the ticket out of this, so I desperately need her to get in touch with me. So, I'm trying to convince the lawyer of that. I also made the mistake of letting Jack and Nora know after I left that I knew the truth now, and I told them that I would never be coming back and they would never be living off of the money that was being sent for my expenses anymore, like they had been doing so far. They also had to return the money that they had taken from me because they had not spent a single dollar on me ever since I started living with them, and I did not owe them anything. They think that I am being selfish because apparently, it's their belief that I owed my life to them. Even after finding out that I know the truth, they still believe that they adopted me out of the goodness of their heart, and the money that they would be getting every month was just a bit of an incentive. But in spite of that, they still planned on adopting me, and they would have done so even if my grandma did not send them that check every month. So, they believed that I was being self-centered and greedy and that I needed to come back because they knew what was right for me, and I should be grateful for that. They are claiming that I used them to get ahead in life and nobody would have even cared about me had they not decided to take me in, and I would have grown up in the foster system. I'm pretty sure that if they hadn't taken me in, somebody else might have, or I might have gone into the system, but that's still better than being treated like this. I know that's a big deal to say something like that, but I don't even care anymore. The only reason I'm even second-guessing myself is because I have so many mixed emotions right now that I can't trust my judgment. So, I deferred leaving my adoptive parents after I found out that they had only taken me in because my grandma was sending child support money to them. Date 1. Hi. Thank you for the overwhelming response to my post. I'm still living with my friend. Almost 8 days have passed since I left my house, or rather, since I left Jack and Nora's house. That was never my home anyway. Coming to what happened, I have decided to block them and move on with my life. I still haven't heard back from my grandma, and my lawyer keeps telling me that she doesn't want to get in touch with me because she's scared. What she is so scared of, I have no idea. I find it a little frustrating that she is ready to financially support me for 18 years, but when it comes to actually standing up for me and taking me in, she's suddenly scared. I don't even understand what my parents have done to piss their families off in such a way that they are afraid of even interacting with me. It's just a huge mess right now, and I'm just lucky that my friend is letting me live with her and being so supportive. Jack and Nora are still trying to get in touch with me, probably because they want to make me the cash cow for a couple of more years, like they had initially intended to. I can't believe that they still think that I'm going to come back with them after everything that I have found out. That is just never going to happen, so they can probably just stop trying to talk to my friends and parents and telling them that I'm crazy and stuff just so they can kick me out of the house and I will be forced to come back to them. These stupid tactics are not going to work because my friends' parents are sane people, and they know the truth. They know that I would never lie about something like this, so they trust me blindly, and they are never going to believe what Jack and Nora are saying about me and kick me out on their word. It's around this time that I start missing my parents a little more, since I know that if they were still alive, I would never have to deal with any of this. My life would be just as easy as anybody else's, but unfortunately, here I am, stuck in this weird situation without any idea about how I was going to be able to deal with this insanity. My only hope right now is that somehow I'm able to get back in touch with my grandma, and she is able to stand up for me for the one time that actually counts. I don't know what my parents have done, and honestly, at this point, I'm not even interested in finding out because I just want what's best for my future. So, no matter what they have done, I just hope that my grandma gets in touch with me and accepts me instead of pushing me away like she has done for the past 18 years. Update 2. Hello. So 2 whole weeks have passed since I started living with my friend. She and her parents have told me that I can make myself comfortable and live with them for as long as I need to, until this whole thing is sorted out, or at least until I'm able to go to college, and I'm really grateful for that. So, at least I don't have to worry about having a place to live. But anyway, a couple of days ago, I was finally able to find out why it is that my grandparents don't want to speak to me and my parents' families are pissed off at them. And it's not a pretty reason. I can kind of understand why their families cut them off, but honestly, even then, I think it's kind of a mean thing to not accept me either, because my parents are gone now, and family was supposed to be the one thing that I could count on. They disowned me and never took me in and did not treat me as one of their own, which is just a little harsh to me. So, my father was actually involved with my aunt before he got married to my mother. It's crazy because I didn't even know that my mother had a younger sister. But yes, that's what was supposed to happen. My dad was supposed to get married to my aunt, but unfortunately, my mother and father started developing feelings for each other during the wedding preparation, and just about 3 days before the wedding was supposed to take place, they eloped. Their families were disgraced, and they literally became the talk of the town. It was a huge scandal, and even now, people still talk about it because they used to live in a relatively small town. Everybody knew everybody, so it was really hard to quash this news, and it left my aunt in shambles. She took to drinking after that incident and still hasn't been able to stop. Unfortunately, so her alcoholism is what pretty much ruined all her chances of having a good life, and now she lives off of the money of her parents and hasn't been able to do a single thing for herself. She doesn't have a job, no career, no prospects, no family. She is just a shadow of her previous self. And I can totally understand why her family would not want anything to do with my parents after that. It was not a nice thing to do. I'll admit that, and I can totally understand why they would not want to have any contact with my parents after that. But honestly, I need them right now. It was my parents' lawyer who told me this story and said that this is the real reason why my grandmother does not want to get back in touch with me. Because if she does, it's going to be a huge thing for both families, because they don't want to relive everything that they went through at the time that my parents eloped together. And me returning to them, that will definitely cause a stir. So, just to avoid the drama and stuff, she has been avoiding me. But I don't think it's okay anymore. I think I need help right now, and I don't get why what has happened in the past should be taken out on me. I shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of my parents' actions, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if what I'm demanding is fair or not, but I just can't deal with this anymore. Update 3. Hi, so I have so much to share with you guys right now. For starters, I am living with my grandma right now. It has been almost 1 month since my last update here, and after that, I kept trying to convince my parents' lawyer to give me her number, just to let me have a conversation with her once. Just one conversation, that's all that I needed. 1 hour of her life is what I wanted. And he somehow managed to get my grandma to agree to that, and in that hour I was able to convince her that I really needed her help and I wanted the family to accept me. Because I knew that what my parents had done was really wrong and not acceptable in any way, but I did not play any part in it. I didn't even know about it until a couple of days ago, so it was kind of unfair to be punishing me for what my parents did because I did not deserve it. And then I told her about how Jack and Nora had been treating me, and that's what got her attention since she did not think that they would be the kind of people to treat me like that. Because she had met them before she allowed them to adopt me and had kept in touch with them throughout these past 18 years. She had expected them to be nice and kind people because that's how they always portrayed themselves. But the reality was something else. After hearing me out, she told me that she would talk to the families and try to see what she could do. So, I waited for about 2 weeks, and then she let me know that the family was ready to take me back. It had taken a lot of convincing, but after they had learned of the way that Jack and Nora had treated me my entire childhood and how much I had been through, they told me that they were ready to take me back and forgive what had happened with my parents. Anyway, it was all just water under the bridge now because they were gone. They would never come back, and it was immaterial what they did in the past because my misery could not be less than their shame. So, currently, I'm living with my grandma, and my grandfather still tries to come around and accept me. In a couple of days, I'm going to have to meet my mother's side of the family as well, who are still skeptical because of what their daughter is going through. I feel bad for my aunt, so I'm giving them their space right now since they definitely need it, and it's a big step for them that they have at least accepted me. We can meet later and sort things out. Anyway, Jack and Nora are out of the picture now, and they have to return the money that they took from me because my grandma has told them that she's going to sue them afterward if they don't do as I say. Since they have treated me badly, and it is definitely grounds for a lawsuit. And the best news is, I'm going to start college in a couple of weeks. So, I'm excited that things are finally falling into place, and I'm just so incredibly happy. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Toxic mother-in-law told me I wasn't family right before our vacation. So my husband and I ditched them at the airport and went on our own trip. A few days ago, my husband's family and I were about to leave for a family vacation. They have a ritual of having an annual family vacation where my in-laws all get together, pick a destination, and take a week off of everything to travel. My husband, 30M, and I, 30F, got married recently, but we'd been together for 3 years before, and I was quite excited to be a part of this for the first time. The year before this, while we were engaged, he asked me to join him, but since his family hadn't asked me, I felt weird and said no. But this time, my mother-in-law Sandra asked me to join them, and that was a pretty big deal. I had a feeling that Sandra didn't really like me before since she had never made me feel welcome as part of the family. She hadn't been outright mean to me, but she just wasn't as nice to me as she was to other people and always seemed a little distant and kind of cold when it came to me. I think a major part of the reason that she seemed to dislike me was because when we started dating, my husband moved out of their house and started living with me instead. I think that's about the time that her behavior towards me started changing and getting colder. But obviously, she couldn't hold it against me, so she tried to cover it up as much as she could. Still, I picked up on certain things and I knew that she didn't like the fact that I was the reason her son had moved out of the family home to live with me. I'm quite independent and have been living away from my parents ever since I started college, so moving in with his parents was never an option for me. Living with his family or even mine was never on the cards for me and was pretty much a non-negotiable. I wasn't going to do that after marriage, and I certainly wasn't going to entertain living with his parents or living close to them and having them drop by every other day while we were dating. I don't think there was anything unreasonable about what I wanted, and I was perfectly clear about these things with my husband when we first started dating and talking about moving in together. He was okay with it, and as long as he was fine with it, I didn't see any reason for anybody else to feel negatively about it. He had also been considering getting a place of his own and moving out, but the only thing that had been stopping him was the fact that his mother wanted everybody to live together under one roof or at least close by so the family could get together on the weekends or even every other day, and so far she had managed to make it happen. My husband has an older sister who's married and has a daughter. After getting married, she moved out of the family home because of space issues, but she just moved down the street, and they get together every other day. So I feel like Sandra feels that that is the only normal way to live, and what I want is unreasonable because she is used to having her kids around all the time. But my husband prefers to live with me away from his family since he says that he grew up with having absolutely zero privacy, and he appreciates the space now. So my husband and I are quite happy with our living arrangements, but I know that somewhere Sandra holds me responsible for this and maybe feels like I am the reason her son doesn't want to live with his family anymore. That's the only reason I can think of for her not liking me because, apart from that, I have always been very pleasant to my husband's family and have done my best to assimilate into his family. But even that's not enough, apparently, because a couple of days ago, Sandra let me know that she still doesn't consider me family, even though I married her son just a couple of months ago. We had been planning the family vacation for months, and I had played an active role in it. Now, usually, how these things go is that my husband's parents pay for all of it, and it's never any trouble for them because they are quite well off. I had assumed that it would be the same this time around as well because my husband had told me that we did not need to worry about the money beforehand. Just to be clear, I didn't have a problem with paying for myself, but I had been told that I wouldn't need to. So when, right before the day that we were supposed to leave for our vacation, Sandra sat me down and told me that I would need to pay for myself, it came as quite a shock to me. She had invited me over and said that she wanted to discuss certain things about the trip, so I had gone over by myself since my husband was finishing up work before he took time off. She went on to tell me that this was meant to be a family vacation and that is why she and her husband would cover all the expenses every year. But unfortunately, they didn't consider me family just yet because they felt like they hadn't gotten to know me that well. So she expected me to pay for myself but not make much of a fuss out of it because that would just spoil the previous vacation vibe, and she didn't want to start off on a bad note. She didn't stop there and decided to make things worse by telling me that the reason she didn't consider me close enough to call family was because, unlike her son-in-law, she felt like she rarely ever got to see me and my husband because we never visited as often as the others. And that was one of the reasons why she felt like I wasn't family just yet. I was obviously very hurt by what she said because I felt like I had tried hard to get along with his family, even though Sandra had made it very clear to me that she didn't exactly approve of me. And all along, she had led me to believe that I was finally part of the family by letting me be part of the planning for the vacation. She could have been upfront with me right from the beginning, and I would have been okay with it, but telling me about this right before the day that we were supposed to leave just seemed unnecessarily cruel and mean. But I tried my best to hide my feelings and make it seem as though I was okay with this and I understood while, on the inside, I was actually really upset. I didn't want to say anything until I had discussed this with my husband because I didn't want to react quickly and let my anger get the better of me. So I told her that it was okay and that I understood where she was coming from, so I would obviously pay for myself. She was a little surprised when I said that it was all fine, and I could tell that this was not the reaction that she had hoped for. But I didn't stick around to talk to her afterward and headed back home. It was all I could do to keep myself from bursting into tears as soon as I came home, but I tried to be calm and explain everything to my husband when he saw that I was visibly upset and asked me what had gone down at his mother's house. He was furious and told me that he was going to cancel the vacation then and there because he had no interest in spending any more time with his mother after the way she had insulted me. And then I told him that I had suspected that she didn't like me for quite some time, but I never brought it up because it was just a dumb theory that I had come up with to explain why she was always so cold to me. But now I was beginning to feel that it wasn't just a theory after all, and there might be some truth to it. I explained to him how his mother's behavior towards me had changed when he moved out to live with me, and she started acting cold towards me after that. Also, what she had said about me not being close enough to be considered family because I didn't visit them often all pointed towards the same explanation. When I told him about it, he said that it could be true because he had always known that family meant a lot to his mother, and she wanted him to at least live nearby. She had been pretty upset when he had first told her that he would be moving out to live with me, and that he didn't want to rent a house closer to home because he needed his personal space. Even though Sandra hadn't shown it at the time, she probably blamed me for it and was still holding it against me, which explained her behavior. However, that was still not an excuse to be so cruel to me and try to humiliate me right before we left for our vacation. I felt awful that day, and while we were talking, my husband and I decided that canceling the vacation and telling her off just wasn't good enough because I wanted her to feel just as bad as I had felt. So he and I decided that we would go along with their plan and meet at the airport the next day, but instead of accompanying them, we would just take a flight somewhere else and leave them at the airport. By the time they could understand what was going on, it would be too late, and we would already be someplace else by then. It was a perfectly foolproof plan, and we went through with it. The very next day, we met the family at the airport just as we had planned, but then we excused ourselves, saying that we wanted to get some photos clicked and walked away. They did not suspect a thing because they were too busy talking among themselves. So we headed over to the counter and purchased us 2 tickets to a flight that would take off the earliest and to a desirable destination. We ended up picking San Francisco, and right now we're here and it's really fun. We were supposed to go to Miami, but I prefer this because it's just me and my husband without anyone who doesn't like me. Of course, by the time we had purchased the tickets and taken our seats on the flight, his family had figured out that something was off and tried to call us several times. They had even texted us, but we had just ignored all of it. Luckily, an airport is a pretty big place, and they were not able to find us in time to stop us or confront us, and we were able to reach our destination without much drama. Once our flight landed, we finally decided to get back to them, and my husband told everybody the truth in the family text thread. He told them about what Sandra had said to me the day before and said that since this was supposed to be a family vacation and I wasn't family, we had decided that we had better stay out of this altogether out of respect for her. We had expected Sandra to be mad at us and maybe my father-in-law, but we hadn't expected the entire family to turn against us. Everybody seemed pretty mad because we had abandoned them at the airport and they had been worried sick for us. They had still taken their flight, though, so I don't understand what they were so pissed about. Anyway, they told us that it was really irresponsible and selfish of us to just go MIA without a word and leave them wondering about us. They were especially upset with me because they didn't think that Sandra's words warranted such extreme action. They believed that I shouldn't even have thought that they were going to cover for me to come on the family vacation, and that it had been my mistake not to offer to pay for myself and just assume that I could come with him for free, seeing as how I hadn't made an effort to really become a part of the family. They said that I had never tried to attend their weekly family dinners or even keep in touch with them online and chat with them every day, which they do, apparently. Felt like I had no time for them, and while they respected that, they couldn't allow me to use them and treat them like banks. That is why Sandra had felt the need to clarify that they were not going to be paying for me to join them on the vacation, simply because I hadn't made an effort to get along with them, and neither had I even offered to pay for myself. I felt really insulted because I earn my own money and I would never expect somebody else to pay for me, so for them to imply that I was being entitled and self-centered was really not okay with me. I told them that their expectations were absolutely unrealistic and didn't even make sense. They claimed that they had dinner together weekly, but it was really every other day, and it was completely unfair of them to expect my husband and me to drive all the way to their house after work and have dinner with them so often. We wanted some personal space, and yet we still tried our very best to visit them at least once every 1 or 2 weeks so they wouldn't feel bad, and this had been going on since way before we were even married. I felt like they were totally overlooking that on purpose just to make it feel like I was in the wrong here when I really wasn't, and I knew it. So I reminded them exactly how hard I had tried to become a part of their family to the best of my abilities, and if that was still not enough for them, then there was not much that my husband and I could do now. They were pissed and said that we were being immature and had ruined their vacation with our selfishness. Edit. I feel like I had to make this clear because a lot of the comments were accusing me of isolating my husband, and that's a really heavy accusation to levy against someone. Let me just say that it wasn't just me who thought that the family getting together was a little excessive and unnecessary. No family needs to meet every other day for lunch and dinner. At that point, you might as well be living together. And what was the point of moving away from them if he was just going to visit them every single day? My husband also wanted this, not just me. The two of us had decided that we were going to live a little distance away from them and try to limit our visits to his family to maybe once a week. They were not happy about it, but this is what both of us wanted. It wasn't a decision that I made single-handedly, so I think it's unfair of everybody to just blame me for it, and that's exactly what his family is doing. I didn't need it from people on Reddit as well. Anyway, the point is that my husband was equally a part of this decision as me. Neither of us wanted to meet his family every other day. And as for what they said about me expecting them to pay for my plane tickets and take me on vacation with them when I hadn't even made an effort to really get to know them and become a part of the family, I don't think any of that is true. I did not expect them, or feel entitled, for them to cover me for the vacation. If they had told me right from the beginning that they expected me to cover my own expenses for the vacation, I would have either agreed to it or just wouldn't have gone. But for Sandra to sit me down one day before the vacation and tell me that my expenses weren't going to be covered by them because I wasn't family, that just felt premeditated and a deliberate move to make me feel bad. I would not have had a problem paying for myself, as I already mentioned above. They have unreasonable expectations, but I don't. And yes, I have tried really hard to get along with them. Them saying that I didn't try to become a part of the family just because I didn't go to their house every other day is just ridiculous. I did try very hard to get them to like me, and I thought it was just Sandra who didn't approve of me, but as it turns out, none of them like me as much as I thought they did, and that just sucks. Date 1. So my husband and I are still on vacation, but his family is being a total pain. I have realized that them being mad at me for not wanting to practically live with them was very unreasonable, and I don't need to sacrifice my personal space and privacy just to please them. If they want to be mad at me, then fine, they can go ahead and be mad. But I just wish that they wouldn't make it a point to let us know that they are mad because we know we just don't care, and they really need to accept it. Just yesterday, they decided to text me, because texting my husband wasn't working, and told me that whatever I was trying to do to their family was going to fail because their relationships were way too strong for someone like me to break. I thought it was needlessly dramatic of them to make such a big deal out of this because, as far as I was concerned, I hadn't done anything to break them apart. They had insulted me, and that is why my husband and I had decided to separate from them. Once again, they have failed to realize that my husband has free will as well, and I can't exactly force him to do anything that he doesn't want to do. So if we decided to have a separate vacation away from them, it was because my husband wanted the same thing. And I know that it was difficult for them to accept it, but it was the truth. I texted them back saying that my husband didn't want to spend his vacation with them, and both of us had decided on this, so it was really silly of them to just blame me. I also told them that if they had just treated me decently instead of being horrible, then maybe my husband wouldn't have even wanted to separate from them. So if they wanted to blame somebody, then they should just blame themselves. Sandra had been sending me those texts, but I knew that the entire family agreed with her, and it was a shared sentiment that I was somehow controlling my husband and forcing him to break away from his family. I didn't want to engage with her or anybody else from his family after I had said whatever I wanted to tell them, so I decided to block them all and focus on my vacation because I had taken time off for this, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste. I told my husband about the text, and he told me to just ignore it because there was no point in trying to explain anything to them. They were too caught up among themselves to consider that maybe we just want to lead a normal life, and it wouldn't be possible if we were living with them or even around them. They're all just really dramatic. Update 2. So we finally came back from our vacation last night, and it was a really fun couple of days. But now that it's over, it's back to work. We were expecting to have a peaceful week back here, but that's not going to be possible because his family also returned today. We had no contact with his family when we were on vacation because both of us had blocked them all on every social media platform, and we had also blocked their numbers. They didn't know where we were, so they couldn't get to us in any way. It had been quite peaceful away from them and the drama, but now that we are back, and so are they wasted no time in trying to reach out to us only to create drama. We had just come back home from a long day at work when we heard somebody at our doorstep ringing the bell like nobody's business. We knew that it had to be somebody from my husband's family even before we opened the door, and sure enough, it was Sandra standing right outside. We didn't want her to come inside and told her that we were really tired from work and were not interested in speaking to her right now. But she pushed past us and entered the living room anyway. I was really annoyed and told her that I wanted her out of my house because the way she had behaved with me before the vacation was absolutely unacceptable, and I had nothing to say to her, and neither did I want to hear from her because I just knew that she was going to find a way to blame me for everything. But instead, she told me to shut up and said that she wasn't here to talk to me anyway. She was here to talk to her son, so I needed to stay quiet. I didn't like the tone that she took with me, so I told her that she couldn't speak to me that way, especially when she was under my roof. That was all I needed to say to piss her off really bad, because then she started yelling at me like crazy and accused me of a bunch of things, like trying to isolate her son and trying to put her down in front of him so he loses respect for her. She told me that she had always known that this day was going to come because I had always been a homewrecker, and I couldn't stand to see the fact that my husband was close with his family because that would just mean that I had less control over him. She called me a psycho and said that she was here to rescue her son before it was too late, and I had no right to interfere because I was not family. I told her that I was glad that I was not a part of her family because it seemed to me like she wanted to run a cult more than just have a family. She completely lost it when I said that and practically launched herself at me. Before I knew it, she had grabbed me by the hair and was physically attacking me. It took my husband mere seconds to separate us and force his mother out of the house. She didn't stop screaming at me even as she was being kicked out of our house and kept calling me really derogatory things that I didn't even want to mention here because they were just that bad. I was quite shaken up, and I waited for a couple of seconds to calm down before my husband and I called the cops and had her removed from our property. She hadn't left even after my husband had pushed her out of the house and had remained in the front yard, screaming at the top of her voice about how I was breaking her family, but she was not going to let it happen. It wasn't until the cops finally arrived on the scene that she stopped yelling, and then she started begging us not to press charges. But it was too late, and my husband and I had already made up our minds that we were not going to drop this so easily. I mean, she had attacked me physically, so I couldn't just let it go because then nothing would stop her from doing it a second time. So he and I pressed charges against her, and since I wasn't actually injured badly, they are probably going to let her off easy, but at least it's going to go on record. She was taken away, and she was actually sobbing uncontrollably when that was happening, which was crazy because just a few seconds before that, she had been screaming at us and threatening us. After that, my husband and I decided to start looking for a lawyer so we could get a restraining order against her because she could not be trusted. Clearly, there was something very unhinged about her, and I didn't want to risk anything. We also started thinking about moving away, something we had already been considering for a while because this location was kind of inconvenient for my husband, and we were thinking about moving to a place that was equally close to both of our offices. We just want to leave no stone unturned to make sure that she can't get to us ever again. And it goes for his family as well. It's been a couple of hours since she was arrested, and nobody from his family has tried to contact us yet. But I know that they will be very upset about this, and they might even disinherit him over this. But it's worth it because Sandra needed to be taken down a notch, and I have no regrets about saying that she was a cult leader and then having her arrested for attacking me. She totally deserved all of it. Update 3. We got the restraining order against Sandra, and it's been a couple of days since then. These past 2 weeks after Sandra was arrested were really busy for both of us because we started looking for a new house to move into, and we also had to deal with the drama that ensued later. Of course, there was also the restraining order and the court appearances to deal with. With all that I was dealing with, I didn't have much time to post an update, but right now I can. First things first, Sandra got off easy with just community service since I wasn't hurt badly. However, my husband's family decided to make a big deal out of it and pretend like she was the victim in the situation that she herself had created. They ran their mouths off to every single family member that they could find, telling them about how I had instigated Sandra, and that's why she had pounced on me. But when I got the reaction that I wanted, we called the police and had her arrested. They are claiming that this was all planned, and we had every intention of provoking Sandra just so she would attack us, and we would have an excuse to get her in trouble. So somehow, I'm the bad guy here even though I was the one who got attacked. It doesn't even make sense, but that's the story that they are choosing to go with. Luckily, not many people are buying it and are mostly on our side, so they are cutting my husband's family off. In a way, it's true what I said about Sandra wanting to run a cult instead of a family and that her expectations were unreasonably high and kind of unhealthy. I'm glad that I got the chance to say it to her face because she needed to know that she was a cuckoo, and if the opportunity ever presents itself again, then I would gladly say it to her again, even if that meant she would attack me once more because it would be totally worth it. But the likelihood of us meeting again anytime soon is low because of the restraining order. Also because my husband and I moved houses a couple of days ago. They don't know where to find us now, and they have been blocked on all our social media ever since we went on vacation. So that's not a matter of concern for us. Honestly, he is more relieved than I am because he used to say that being around his family was almost suffocating for him, and I can see why. I would probably feel the same way if my parents acted like that and gave me absolutely zero privacy or space of my own. I guess I got really lucky when it came to my family, including my husband. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.